everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Knighted Ones podcast. First of all, I just want to start the show by saying thank you to everyone who reached out, gave us well wishes, listened, subscribed. We had a lot of subscribers on the YouTube channel. It's really appreciated. We're doing this for you guys. Of course, we're doing it for ourselves too, because we have a lot of fun doing it. But primarily, it's for you guys. So thank you so much, and keep the feedback coming as we kind of evolve the show. That's only going to help us be better for you and hopefully make this a little bit more entertaining, other than a bunch of old guys, with the exception of Trey, of course, sitting around drinking beer and talking football. So welcome to the Knighted Ones podcast. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF National Champion, a former radio host, and several podcasters shooting the breeze and talking UCF sports. So, as always, I'm going to bring our peeps, our cadre, our team up, and we'll start with Josh Lazar, who's now going to be called, instead of Pop My Collar, it's going to be Floppy Collar. Josh Floppy Collar Lazar, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining again this week.
It's up. I'm not going to throw it down.
Is it up? I don't know. It's kind of half up there. I don't know, Josh.
It's shiny on shiny. No. I'm good. Everything's good. And
listen, he's trying to hide his floppy collar. That's what I just heard.
Yeah, you said we're a bunch of old guys. I think you're kind of dating yourself. That's all. We're
you're projecting. Is that what I'm doing? Am I projecting?
You might be.
All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and bring Alan in the stream. My fellow old guy, Alan, who has less gray beard than I do and gray hair. Hey guys, listen, I'm really not that old. I just, matured a little earlier. So because of that, I have a little bit more gray hair. So welcome to the stream, Alan. Glad to have you back again this week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I think I'm the second youngest here. But I'm happy to be here.
Josh. So he's calling us the old guys.
That might be true.
By definition.
I think that's it. All right. And last but certainly not least, and certainly the youngest person in the show, Trey Neal, my good friend, amazing student athlete, and now married man, adult, and great defensive analyst. So unfortunately, he's got the ring, By the way, share with the listeners a little bit about that. That was a recent thing, right? So keeping it in the UCF family, share about your good news. I think that's exciting for everybody.
Recently, I got married July 15th. Can't forget that date. And
just wait 20 years. Just don't.
Exactly.
That's what that is.
And she was a former UCF softball player. So kind of the little story of, another athlete dates another athlete, see where it goes from there. But really, I mean, she's a sweet girl, love her to death. And she was one of the people that just understood, what I was going through as an athlete, just lifting weights and balancing the schedule and school and sports. She understood it. She lived through it. So, it was easy conversation, made for easy, just everything. So, just got married to her July 15th. And went to South Africa for a honeymoon. I talked to Roger about it a little bit. It's amazing just to see, places you never think you'd see. And, it was just an awesome experience. Went on a safari and, a couple of island things. So it was just really cool. And, just kind of living the married life now. Not too much has changed, but calling her my wife is one of the hardest things that I have to get used to. And wearing my ring, I forget so much.
So you didn't have like the pet nickname wifey or anything, hey, that's my wifey, nothing.
Yeah, no, I never really did it. I never really had that nickname. Yeah. I'm struggling, man. It took me a year, because we were engaged for a year. So right when I got used to saying fiance, then I had to stop saying it. So
I know that feeling.
That's the problem. Yeah.
So it takes 16 weeks. We learned this from our UBT live show, right? So which is UCF Business Talk. It takes 16 weeks to break a habit. So you got married July 15th. Your time's running out. So you gotta make sure that you're continuing to do that, because it's TikToking and it's live on the air. And, maybe one of these days we'll be able to bring your wonderful wife on, and we'll mute you and let her talk about all the great things about you. And, she can share some of her softball experiences because, hey, it's our softball program is amazing.
Yeah.
They've done a great job, and she helped build that. And love to hear some of those stories because the softball team always is great and never disappoints. So very happy
one day.
for that for years.
Yeah, we'll get her on one day.
All right, that sounds good. All right, so I'm gonna switch up the way we're viewing things, and we've got everybody where they need to be in their corners. So this week we kicked off football. How exciting is that? I was able to go to the game. Rob was there. Alan, unfortunately, was not. Trey was not. Josh was. So we got the in-person experience, which meant a lot of traffic, a light show that was interesting, and
it was good.
It was. No, let's say this about that. Okay. Great idea on shutting all of the stadium lights out.
Yes.
While we were doing the light show. That looked great. Yeah. It was fun to be a part of. We just got to make sure that all the lights come back on.
Exactly.
After we do the show. So, just a little detail that we're still working out. The one thing, honestly, that was totally forgivable, but it was funny because the referee called timeout on the lights on the mic. If you were in the stadium, the referee literally said he didn't know what to say, so he said, officials timeout on the lights. It was like I was dying laughing. It was hilarious. And then the other thing, game day experience, which was awesome. We have more fireworks now, and there's smoke cannons all the way around the stadium. So if you're in the stadium, you look at the lower bowl, they've got 6 smoke cannons, which was awesome during the light show. So they're really trying to liven it up. The one bad part that kind of disappointed me was we've obviously got a new DJ. Love the music that he was spinning.
Yep.
Only challenge was they didn't get the timing right on Zombie Nation before the team comes out. They literally played it for maybe like 15 seconds, and then the band clicked right in and the guys came out. So for the freshmen, they didn't get the whole, bouncing, shaking doors before they go into, the little hallway before they get out to the field. They didn't get to stand there, as everything was bouncing. And, so that was kind of tough, but I'm sure UCF game day operations will get it handled. Other than that, it was pretty smooth. Full stadium. It didn't start that way. Students showed out. Students were there from the beginning. In fact, we had about 3,000 or 4,000 students that were turned away for the game. And gate 2, if you were near there, if you had seats there, there was actually a little bit of fracas. Okay. As the students actually rushed the gate trying to get in. So they shut the gate down and directed people to other areas. So clearly they were involved. They stayed all the way through most of the fourth quarter for Kent State and a blowout, which is definitely P4 student section behavior compared to what it was in the past. So overall, good game day experience. It was great to be back in the bounce house. The weather cooperated, and we got to celebrate the end of the game. And I truly think they timed it that way. They stretched out that last drive for the touchdown with a rocket launch. And nowhere else in college football do you get a rocket launch as time expires and you score a touchdown. So overall, great experience. Had a great time. The stadium was full. I'd say there was probably 42 to 43,000 people there. I think ESPN said we had 44 and change, but it was a true 42, 43,000. So overall, great experience. Josh, any other takeaways or thoughts on the actual game day experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to pop in try to figure out how many we had looking at the box sheet. But so on operations, 100% on the lights, it's interesting. You're talking about the smoke machines. There was smoke coming from around that light too, from our angle, and we didn't know if it was smoke from the light or it was smoke from the smoke machine. We think it was smoke from the smoke machines, but I was sitting with an engineer and like, why is there smoke coming from that light stack? So that's yes, like that. When we were getting in, I sit in the cabana. When we were coming in, students were coming into the cabana seats instead of going one gate over. So that was fun. Cabana's always hard to get into for whatever reason, whenever it's like within an hour of game time. I tried to get on campus around an hour before game time, and I spent more time in Research Park driving to my parking spot than I did driving from downtown Orlando to Research Park. It was a late arriving crowd. And unless you were hustling to get into the stadium, you weren't making it there if you landed on campus about an hour before game time. We'll see if that continues. But and again, it was Kent State. Nothing to them. UCF football games, we have a lot of hype right now. We're doing pretty well. But still, that was a little surprising. And probably because it's a weekday game. There was halftime rain. Right, the weather cooperated except during halftime. So if you can go underneath the stadium for the halftime, get a drink if it was available, talk about that in a second, and come back out, you missed all the rain. So that was really good. And at the Cabana, there was almost no hard alcohol by halftime. And if, I know, I am a beer person. Oh, sorry, let me scrap that. I am not a beer person. I don't drink beer, can't get the taste of it, don't know why. Hard cider, great. Liquor, awesome. Beer, can't. I just can't. So I had to go to like a seltzer that actually was halfway decent, but I wanted something a little bit harder. And so that was, most of the operations pretty solid. I usually make I'll be open. I'll make a legal turn to get out of the stadium after the game. I decided not to do that today because we were going to Waffle House after the game to make sure
Right.
we help out Gus, and he doesn't own the one here, but he owns a few.
All right. Hold on. Let's pause there because this came up in the chat.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Everybody's Waffle House orders, starting with you, and then we'll work our way around the horn.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I usually get the All-Star, the one with the extra waffle on the side. I'll get the cheese on the eggs. I'll usually get all bacon, and then I'll definitely get cheese and usually mushrooms on the hash browns. Sometimes I'll throw in some other stuff, but sometimes ham, sometimes not. But that's usually my Waffle House order, and it was good. It was a long wait, though. It was like an hour to get food, but It was worth it.
Was Gus in line?
No, but half of the marching knights were like, I just see people marching knights in the overalls and all. They were just coming in and leaving when they're like, it'll be an hour, and they're like, see ya.
All right, Trey.
All-Star special, eggs scrambled with cheese, hash browns covered in chunk, crispy bacon, and extra bacon. I've been doing this order since I was like 13 and 14 years old. Like that's what we did every Friday before my high school games in Georgia. So like Waffle House is like life. Like that's my life. So I've done that since forever. Yeah. Haven't changed, haven't veered, never will.
All right. Going back. It's your turn, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the All-Star breakfast, that's the go-to. And I usually get it with hash browns, scrambled eggs, and like the big ass waffle.
Okay. For me, I have only been to the Waffle House one time.
What?
I am not a Waffle House connoisseur. I know we're going to get hate.
It's a late night drunk food.
You're going to get hate.
Well, hey, listen, the Twitter represents the show, not just me. So, we are collectively getting hate tweets on my Waffle House stance. But yeah, no, I'm a Denny's guy. So I'd rather go to Denny's than Waffle House. I've only been one time, and I didn't really care for it all that much. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I had the waffles, and I know it's a drunk food thing, but yeah, if I'm gonna make poor choices, it's probably going to be Taco Bell or Crystals, right? That's going to be my poor choices. Or if I go to Denny's, it will be a cheese, the French fries that they have, and they melt the cheese on top of it. That's a whole plate of fries with cheese on top. I mean, great for my waistline, great for my heart. And if you can't tell, I'm being sarcastic, but great for my palate. So that's my thing.
I'm not going to derail us too long, but what you probably don't know is I worked at Denny's for almost a decade and the one at University in Alafaya. So I've seen some things. That's maybe for another conversation. And I love Denny's. I used to work there a lot, but Waffle House is good.
Bro,
yeah.
If you think you saw stuff at Denny's, I guarantee you I've seen worse at Waffle House. Waffle House is the ratchet Denny's. That's what that is.
But I've seen people who played for UCF do some fun things at Denny's. Maybe another time.
Oh, well, that does sound like a great segment. All right, back to the Kent State review. We've kind of completely gone off topic for 16 minutes. All right, so we talked about game day operations. Let's talk about JRP. So last year, JRP, Mikey Keene, that was, you had half the fan base, or maybe 3/4 of the fan base that were Mikey Keene fans. You had some players that were Mikey Keene fans that were upset when he was not named the starter. He came in and played some games for us. He played this weekend and played pretty well against, I'm not sure we could call it P4 competition in Purdue. I mean, that's like G8. But
technically
P4 competition in Purdue, and came out a winner and played really well. But let's talk about JRP. There was a big deal made of, Henshaw coming in, trying to teach him more about being a quarterback. Gus does not have the best reputation on developing quarterbacks. And I think everybody was kind of excited to see what the new wrinkles were going to be. Albeit, this was game 1 against Kent State, and we weren't going to show anything major, but there were a lot of differences if you knew what to look for. So, Alan, what did you think about JRP's performance, and did you notice anything different?
So I kind of put on my channel, I said he played decent-ish. Like I felt he was more dynamic passing than he was last year. Again, like you mentioned, we're playing Kent State. I don't know how much I can really glean from this performance. They had only 4 starters coming back from last year, which is the lowest amount in entire FBS. So to play essentially a brand new team that's never played together, a brand new coaching staff, obviously we were going to eat them alive. So even if JRP had 7 touchdowns through the air, I don't know if you could still glean much from that. But I thought he played. I thought he looked a little bit more composed in the pocket. I thought he chose to pass more than he normally would run in some certain situations. So I thought he looked more composed there. And obviously, I mean, he had a pretty good game statistically, 281 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, rushed for another 90 on the ground and a touchdown. So he was good. I thought I saw him throw into triple or double coverage multiple times, which I didn't like. I thought his long ball was like a little bit wobbly. It just didn't seem as crisp as it would be on like a slant or a shorter pass. I think if we didn't have those turnovers that he had, we might have gone for 60, 70 points. We obviously only punted 1 time, but I wasn't as impressed as compared to how the coaching staff was talking him up all off season. To see him come out and get 3 turnovers that were essentially all directly his fault, unless I missed something. So I wasn't super impressed, but at the same time, I would like to see how he plays against harder competition, more difficult opponents. But overall, I'd say I'd give him like a B or a B-. I wasn't super impressed, but I wasn't like, oh my God, we got to have Keene instead of him or something like that, if that makes sense.
Well, I can tell you this: there were a lot of people on Twitter and other platforms that were like, "Oh,
Oh,
we
they
gave
were.
up Keen. Look at what happened." And that was, I mean, I'm just like, are you serious right now? So
It wasn't for me.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, it wasn't for me like, oh my God, we made the wrong choice. It was just, I still saw some of the issues that we complained about last year that were clear as day, still alive in the game against Kent State. That doesn't mean that they won't go away as the season progresses, as he continues to get more comfortable. And it wasn't like, oh my God, we should have Keen over him. It was just like, damn, there's still some of those same JRP mistakes that we saw last year. And also, maybe you guys disagree, but I don't think he should have had 3 turnovers against Kent State. But that's my opinion.
I agree.
All right. Trey's agreeing. So Trey, why don't you give us your evaluation of JRP and his performance?
So I didn't think he played terrible. I did. So I try to watch it from just my former playing. It's Kent State. I think everything was vanilla. I think the reads were easy. I think the reads were very obvious. So I think he should have played a little bit more efficient, which he played efficient, I think, passing, which is what I wanted to see him, was just go through reads. Can you go through reads? Even if it's vanilla, can you go through reads? As you said last year, they were telling him, you have one read, check down a run. I feel like he went through his progressions a little bit. He took a step to me a little bit as far as taking care of his body. Now, mind you, he did try to hurdle a guy, which is, again, let's not hurdle. We get you're a great athlete, but, it's not like it's last play of the game. You got to have it. It's the early in the first quarter. Like, save yourself, because if you get hurt, you don't want to have to put yourself in that situation. But I saw early on, like, sometimes he would run out of bounds when he could have. Last year, he might have fought for extra yards, maybe 2 or 3, but take a hit. So to me, like, that's progress that I'm glad to see. Again, that's one of the things I was worried about because of his health. We lost him a few games. And then the progression. So as far as that, I think he looked better. Now, the problem I have is like what Alan said, those same turnover mistakes that he did last year. You saw that a bit. Now, is that going to be something where it's just like, as a playmaker quarterback, you're going to have to kind of live with it? Maybe that's what we're going to have to do and kind of lower our expectations a little bit. I think we saw, I think we have etched in our brains as fans the Mackenzie Milton experience. That's what I think everybody's reference, where you see the crazy, spectacular plays as a freshman, then you see the bonehead plays. But then you see year 2, the crazy, spectacular plays. He cuts out the bonehead plays, and then you see, like, I think we
hold on. Mackenzie Milton, love him, amazing quarterback. Wish we could clone him and just keep bringing him in year after year. Wouldn't that be great? Right? But unfortunately, we can't.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: he kicked off the 2018 season with how many picks?
He threw a little bit, but I think, again, so I think that's where it goes to scheme. I think with Heupel, it's a new system, so he's back to year 1. I think that's where it's, even though he's a year 3 starter, I think because it's a new system, you kind of, like, that's another thing I try to tell people. New systems, you have to get comfortable in it, even though you can kind of have carryover, a lot of different terminology, a lot of different reads, what you're looking for, things. It's so different from scheme to scheme that it can kind of set you back a little bit to what you want. And I think that's why you saw that, like you said, early in 2018, he's kind of turning the ball over a little bit more than what we saw the year before. And I think that's the kind of progression that I was expecting from JRP. And maybe I'm wrong for expecting that. Maybe I see a lot of guys in year 2, they take that step where they can still give you the spectacular plays, but they cut down on the bonehead plays, the turnovers, because now you have a grasp of the offense. So maybe it was just vanilla. Maybe they're going to work on it, but I don't think that was a good way to start because, again, you've had all off season. This is year 2. You kind of want to cut out those mistakes. But like I said, again, maybe our expectations are so high for the kid. We all love JRP, maybe we just have that kind of expectation for him to take that year 2 jump like we've seen a lot of the great quarterbacks in history do. So maybe that's just something that we're doing incorrectly.
All right. What's your overall grade for week 1 performance?
I mean, I think it was again, I'm not going to complain about a 56-6. Also, we're really harping on the offense. I think the defense played great. There's things you can clean up, of course, is tackling, and then there's some schematic things that you can fix or tweak.
Bro, we haven't got to the defense yet. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and the way that they were, just to get a little bit, the way they were playing their offense with their RPOs, it's a lot of delayed RPOs, so they drag on. Would it be a faster read? They kind of delay it to either get the linebackers to suck up, the safeties to suck up, so they can kind of create that throwing window, or they just, long story short, it's unorthodox. I think only Wake Forest kind of runs it like that. So that's kind of why there were a little bit of issues up front, but I think they played well. I think it's week one. You're going to have – I don't think anybody in the country came out perfect.
Well, there was no tape on either offense or defense, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They played with some twists on the offensive line with those delayed handoffs. There were a few things that were in there that we'll talk about when the defense comes up.
Yeah, but offensively, I would give them a B+ just because I think they were just trying to be vanilla. I don't think they wanted to really give us anything. I think the only things they kind of showed were just like trick plays, but that's just more so to say, hey, we'll throw out some trick plays that you guys weren't expecting, and just kind of keep every opponent on their toes. Like, hey, they'll throw a trick play here, they'll throw a trick play there. But I think the offense was very vanilla.
That halfback pass that turned into like a massive run.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think you just put those out there just to kind of keep defensive coordinators up at night, like, hey, they'll do this. And even the touchdown before halftime where it was the tight end at tackle, like, that's just one extra thing that you have to rep during the week. Like, hey, they will do this. Hey, they could possibly do this. Don't be surprised if you're tired and you see the tight end with his hand on the dirt at tackle. Like, you have to be alert for those things, which, even though it's a simple play for the offense to run, they're just like, hey, tackle, tight end, switch, blah, 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 run it. For defense, just the prep, that's another thing we have to prep for, which that's kind of why you throw in those plays. So I'll give them a B+ just because I think it was vanilla. They executed, and, the bonehead mistakes as far as JRP kind of keep me from giving them an
A. All right, Mr. Lazar.
I'll be tight, B+. There was only one drive all game that wasn't a touchdown, that also wasn't a JRP turnover. And that was at a bad false start in the third quarter when the game was probably already over. So my guess, we're talking 70 points if he doesn't throw those picks or get the fumble, right? But let's take all that to the side. It was good. I mean, it was.
But hold on, we're not talking about the whole offense right now. That's next. We're just talking about JRP.
It was good.
Okay.
I mean, it was like. There are pieces and parts that we're all talking about, but for him, I think, could there be improvements? Absolutely, right? We heard it from coach. We've heard it from both the head coach, right? From Gus, we've heard it from Hinshaw. There are improvements to be made, but I don't think he's an A+ right now, and I really don't think he's down near a C. I see where Alan's going with that, but I know we're going to know more than likely this week whether, right? But I just, my gut instinct and kind of what I saw was like, this is some good stuff. Yeah, does he need to slide more? Sure. Like, he goes 40 yards and then just gets knocked, right?
Exactly.
But he went 40, right? So sometimes when you're in that, like, you're playing PlayStation mode, right, it might be hard for him to just switch off and go, oh, no, let's just slide right now.
Yeah. And I think that's his personality. Like, I think he's so vibrant and just a dynamic personality. It carries over on the field. Like, it's almost impossible to turn that switch off. Like, I was surprised he didn't hurdle as many people like he did.
And I will tell you, quarterback, not popping off to the top of my head, the quarterback from FSU doesn't get knocks when he tries to truck someone at the end of a LSU game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying JRP is going to do that, but what I am saying is Jordan Travis, I believe.
Yes.
What I am saying is that I think this was a very positive start, and I'm not going to go like, he shouldn't have thrown the 2 picks and maybe it needed more arc. He should throw it where only one person could get it out of the end zone base. Yeah, we all get that. But I think it was better than some people are laying on to. Now, maybe if Parker Navarro, right, and Tommy Castellano and Mikey Keene and one more quarterback from UCF, I'm not pulling on top of my head, doesn't get all touchdowns, right? We might be hearing something else, but it was good. It was a good JRP, and I feel like it's going to be good next game too.
Yeah. I think also kind of like what you said. I think, after the game, because we're talking in the chat and we're like, he played pretty well. Like, I think that's what we kind of did. Like, he played well. Of course, the 2 boneheaded mistakes. But then again, I think, like, as the days go, and then you see Tommy Castanelis with the crazy, like, I think I text you guys, like, that's what Kyler Murray used to do, and you see that, like, wow, we let that walk out. Then you see Mikey Keene beat, Power 4 Purdue. He go and beat them.
So for those of you listening on podcast, Trey air quoted
quotes,
that.
Yeah, air quotes Purdue. But I think, you see that, and then it kind of gives you that doubt. And just for, like, the fans, just honestly be happy for those guys that, and take that as a testament to the coaching staff that, listen, you guys recruited 4 or 5 guys who are high caliber kind of players. So I think that's also like a props to the recruiting to be able to identify the talent, be able to identify those kind of players. But, JRP is our guy. I'm hired on all, guys, because I've been in their shoes. So I know what it takes. I know if you're preparing enough, I can see that immediately. So, just ride with those guys and just put the faith in them. I think JRP has taken those steps. Maybe was he able to show it this one? Maybe not. Did he have some bonehead mistakes? Of course, he's human. He's not the greatest quarterback to ever walk earth. That I don't think we should have that expectation. But I do think that we have a little bit of that, see a couple of our guys make some spectacular plays. And, I think that kind of, when that's the lasting image in your mind, kind of, you might think, oh, JRP, I wish we had Mikey Keene, which, that's a whole nother kind of topic. But, hey, JRP's our guy this year, and, we're going to ride him till the wheels fall off.
All right. Definitely ride him and hope the wheels don't fall off.
Yeah.
Because last year the wheels fell off the last 2 games because he was injured. So we saw the difference. All right. So for me, JRP, few things. Yes, I saw progress. He stayed in the pocket longer. He rode or he climbed the ladder a few times. Towards the beginning of the game, he rolled out and he threw some back shoulder throws across the field that were pretty solid when he was moving and the receivers were following him. His ball definitely looked a lot better, especially in the short game. He positioned the ball. He still made mistakes, but he positioned the ball. There was one throw. I don't know if it was to Pittman or Xavier Townsend, but he positioned the ball where the receiver could catch it up high, spin off of his defender, and keep running. So I saw a huge difference for me as far as how he was throwing. His motion was better. Yes, he had 2 picks. One was the first one, in my opinion, was like a pretty good play on the ball by the defender.
Yeah.
Was it a advisable throw? No. He still was missing guys that were wide open. That based on the defense that was there that he could have gone to. But for the most part, he spread the ball around, which tells me he wasn't just locking in on his number 1 receiver. It wasn't going to Javad Baker the whole time. Last year, you saw a lot of that, right? And Javad Baker didn't even have a catch until the second quarter, almost till the half. The other thing that I noticed, yes, on the second throw, he threw it just way too flat. He needed to throw to the outside pylon. He thought his guy was going to be able to jump and wrestle that, and it was just a bad throw. Fumble, he's got to hold on to the ball, but he's already getting yelled at by the coaches. My biggest thing, and I talked about this last week, was him sliding. It was funny because it's almost like a confidence thing with him. At the beginning of the game, he was basically kind of playing along with the rules. He was throwing the ball away. He was, climbing the ladder. He was doing those kinds of things. And then as the game progressed, when he got into the third quarter, and he pretty much kind of reverted back to old JRP. He still needed a slide. He's not sliding. He did better. I saw at the beginning of the game, he was trying. But it's almost like, all right, I got this. This is Kent State. I want to go out and ball, right? But you're not going to get opportunities in the NFL, or you're not going to get opportunities to make highlights if you're hurt.
Yeah.
And you're going to hurt your team. Okay. So Gus was mad after the game. Henshaw was definitely mad. He had a pretty honest interview, and if you haven't watched that interview, watch his interview post game. And he said it too, right? They're gonna drill it in him. I think Gus's comment was, I'm gonna go out in the field and tackle him myself, right? So he needs to get it through his head. So overall, he played a heck of a lot better. Something people didn't give him credit for that I don't think people think about is all those times when other quarterbacks would have been had to throw the ball away or would have been sacked, because there were plenty of times where the pocket collapsed and other quarterbacks, without his speed, without his tendencies, without his instinct, would have been sacked. That man, you can tell the difference. He runs I think it's a 4.2 or 4.3 40. You could see that on the field. He was fast, and you could tell the difference on the field at the beginning of this season versus the end of last season. I watched him twice live. Totally different speed, totally different gear. But again, that's the whole reason you take your 40 yards and then you slide, or you take the 40 yards and you run out of bounds, right?
Because those are you're really stealing those yards.
Exactly. Yeah. Those last three don't really matter in the grand scheme.
What's the difference between a 37-yard run and a 40-yard run? Nothing really. You got the first down, keep the sticks moving, let's keep playing.
Well, you're healthy. That's
exactly that's the difference. Exactly.
Yeah, you have 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers. Mm-hmm. They're going to do something with 3 yards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have the weapons, and you're one of them. We don't need 6 running backs, maybe 5.5.
All right, so let's transition off of JRP. Oh, the last thing I'll say, because since we mentioned the Mikey Keene thing, Mikey Keene, in my opinion, and I know I'm going to get flack for this, but that's okay. Mikey Keene is a good passing quarterback. Okay. Yeah. He is not going to get you out of sacks. And he's one-dimensional in a different way, right? Because he has to wait for that to develop. And that means that a lot of those sacks that Mikey Keene would take, JRP doesn't. So that's what you offset with a little bit of that wild card. If he can continue to develop throughout the season in his passing game, and stay out of those double teams, I think, to me, right now, for better or for worse, JRP's the better quarterback and certainly has the most potential. Mikey Keene is the safer quarterback, but I think he has a limited ceiling. Yes, so I wish him nothing but well over at Fresno State. Tommy C, that kills me. I know last year he didn't get more playing time because he didn't know the offense very well. He had a hard time picking it up, was the scuttlebutt from the team. I think if he would have waited this season, he would have had an amazing 2 years, like it is at most high-level P5 teams, where you ride the pine for a couple of years and then come in for your junior or senior year and then go to the NFL. Unfortunately, the team that he's on, he doesn't have a team around him, and he's not going to, and I think he's going to get lost in the shuffle because of that. So great quarterback, great instincts, loved his high school film. It is what it is. So offensively as a whole, I'll kind of tack on that, and then we'll go around the horn here. For those of you that are saying that you did not see any differences in our offense, you did. You just didn't notice it. Okay. Couple of things. We did not have as many screens. We were going vanilla, right, on this offense because we did not need, nor did we want to show that. However, we used our tight ends a lot more. We had some tight end plays where we were slipping Alec Holler out for a touchdown, right? We used what's the new guy? I can't remember, freshman Pittman. We used Pittman several times out there. What we were doing with our tight ends, whether our hands were in the dirt or whether they were going out for a receiving yard or receiving pass, totally different. But the biggest change that I saw was in the middle of the field. Javon Baker, that was a big catch in the middle of the field. We did not have those drag routes across the middle before in that 30-yard range. The other thing I saw is that we were using multiple levels and using floods. So instead of using those screen passes, which we used last year, we were using floods in that. So basically that got JRP on the move to a direction. You had 3 different levels with 3 different receivers coming across, and you had a running back for safety, right? So you had one that was within 10 yards, one that was within 15 to 20 yards, and then another one that was around 30, 40 yards, all running the same direction as JRP, and whichever one broke loose and he got a window, he dumped it off, right? So, you know, and one of those turned into a running back touchdown, right? Because he dumped it off to the running back, and those guys that were flooding cleared out the linebacker. They hadn't seen that before on tape from us, right? So we confused the heck out of them. The other thing is we had no idea what their defense was going to play. And so we just focused on our offense, and that was good. The receivers, some of the routes that they were doing and was completely different route trees than what we were doing last year. If you guys know receivers and you watch their routes, they weren't doing the same route. It wasn't just one guy with a go route and another guy in the middle and then bring everybody tight and then running off of a running formation, depending on what it was, right? So there was a lot of differences. The quarterback was moved around. What the running back was doing was different. So did we see everything? No. Did we see anything extreme? No. But what we did see was a lot of different concepts that are getting baked in and looks that are getting baked in so that defensive coordinators, you know, we did this in the Frost era a lot. You show certain looks to set it up and you run it a certain way. And then that one time you pop it for a big gain, right? Because you're doing a little wrinkle on that look. The defense goes to sleep. They think they know what's coming, you know, and then all of a sudden you do something different. That's what you saw in this game, right? Exactly. So again, our average yards per attempt was about 2 yards higher than it was with Mikey Keene and or JRP last year. They were both about the same. People don't realize that. The other thing that was kind of interesting to me too is, you know, when we're talking about percentages, again, this is Kent State. This is not a P4, P5 team. This isn't even a high-level G5 team, right? This is Kent State. However, completion percentage, I think, was somewhere around 73%. And what was more interesting to me was the longer ranges. He averaged about 33, 34% completion percentage. That's the same as Dylan Gabriel. Mm-hmm. Now, are those the two same passers? No. Does Dylan spin a prettier ball? Yes. Were there a lot more attempts by Dylan Gabriel? 100%. However, statistically, okay, they're throwing the ball a little bit longer, more than they did last year, and the completion percentage is about the same, and our yards per attempt were up. So he's not just doing these dump passes to a running back in the flat or setting up a screen or doing any of these other things that we were doing last year. We're starting to see the seeds, right? The seeds, because you weren't going to see exactly what Henshaw is going to do in this game of some of the stuff that we're going to be doing and we will be seeing against the likes of Boise State, et cetera. So for me, overall, I mean, darn near it was like 728 yards of offense.
Yep.
What I kept thinking was a Frost era. I texted you guys this.
Yeah.
This reminded me of the Frost, the number of yards we were putting out, how quickly our 2-minute offense was way deadlier than anything else. That reminded me of the Frost era too. Minute 10 seconds, 6 plays, touchdown. Okay. That was Frost era football, folks. Right. So, big plays, explosive plays. We had way more explosive plays than we did last year in this game. The way they were set up that way. And, you know, we had way more explosive plays. So I saw a huge difference there. And JRP sat in the pocket a little longer. I'm going to be quiet now. Offensive performance, Trey. I know you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. What did you see that was different?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, the main thing that I saw was them attacking the middle of the field more. Whether that be Henshaw kind of saying, hey, let's expand it, whether that be, hey, JRP's taking that next step, we don't know. But we will find out once we start getting these tougher games and the games get a little bit closer. You kind of rely on what you do the strongest. So if we see we get in a tight one versus Boise and then we just start attacking outside, okay, well, now we're thinking Henshaw's the one implementing this stuff over the middle. But if we're still doing it, then, hey, that's a step for JRP. I want to be positive and lean and think, JRP's taking that step of being able to be accurate across the middle in the intermediate to deeper route. And like you said, being a little bit more accurate, throwing it deep. Like you just mentioned, him and Dylan Gabriel, same percentage, around the same. Granted, like you said, Dylan he took a lot more shots deep during his time. But, that's the step you want to see. And I think that goes to show from Henshaw just kind of implementing it. I also think it goes to show the new scheme. I think, like you said, the guys are running different routes, different route concepts with the flooding of it. You can also – he's giving them easier throws to kind of warm them up. We talked about this a lot last year. JRP is a guy who once he makes one throw, kind of like a shooter, you see one ball go through the basket, now you think the hoop is the ocean. I think that's kind of how JRP plays, where you feed him a little bit of throws and kind of get that rhythm going, and then he can start, playing. I think that's the main thing I saw, was that they kind of opened up the offense without showing a lot. They showed a little bit of the concepts they're going to implement without showing the different formations. And kind of like Roger was mentioning, you keep it vanilla so that teams kind of think you're running one thing, but you can build so much off of one formation. You can build so much off of just running three formations. Some of the best OCs in the game right now don't have a lot of formations. They just have a lot of plays off of it, so that you can't really prepare for a certain play because you can get so many different plays off of it. And I think that's the basis of a good offense. So to me, I think that's what you want to see. And Roger mentioned the Frost era type of offense. I think it was a lot of yards, a lot of points, but the key thing is the balance. I think we were about 400 yards or 300 something yards passing, 300 running. That kind of balance, you're going to win a lot of football games if you can stay balanced in that kind of attack. So I loved what I saw from the offense. It wasn't perfect, but, it was very, very well, very efficient, very smooth running operation. And I think if we can have that all year, that's all we can ask for, and that's really that's all I have to say about it. I think it was a great game one, in my opinion.
All right, Alan. And I'll say this about game one. Game one's to work the bugs out. That's what we're doing, guys.
Work out the kink, shake off the rust, get rid of those nerves.
Yeah, I mean, that I was looking for the same thing, which was balance. Henshaw talked before the season that they're going to air it out more. So I was really looking to that. And when you look at the stats, 723 total yards with, 389 rushing and 320 something passing. It was a lot more balanced. I loved that, I think it was something like 9 different players caught a ball. 7 different players had at least 2 receptions. 5 different players had a rushing touchdown. So I love that they were able to spread it around. It wasn't all going to Javon Baker. It wasn't all going to Kobe Hudson. I thought Townsend had a great game. They really spread the ball around. I was really happy with the balanced attack. And then the other thing I was looking for was JRP going to actually throw it more, which he did. Game 1 last year in the opener, he had 16 rushing attempts. And then last Thursday, he only had 9 rushing attempts. So I thought he made a more concerted effort to stay in the pocket, throw it more. So I was really pleased with how the offense looked. Like you guys all have said, it was vanilla. There wasn't anything super special about it. But look, he made his reads. The offense moved very freely. I thought it flowed really nice. We only punted 1 time. So, and then if you talk about, kind of like Josh said, if you took out the turnovers, we're probably putting up 70 points. So for me, you can't really complain about a 50-point win, putting up 56 points. It was
hold on, Alan. You clearly can complain about it because we've heard it the last 3 freaking days. Like,
you can find anything
seriously, folks. Like, yes, there's things to nitpick. Yes, share, what your frustrations are. But it doesn't mean we have a terrible team. Like,
right.
don't, or we need another quarterback or, whatever. It's like, I mean, I get it. It's football season. I'm going to share a little bit something from our text thread in a new segment we like call Text Talk, which is the overreaction thread for us. But settle down, people. It's the first game of the season. That it's not over. I mean, we got 728
We're just
yards.
getting started. We're
Yeah,
just
It's
getting started.
728 yards. Enjoy the
Look.
game. I mean, seriously, enjoy it. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
No, it's for me. It's like I don't really. I'm not going to get overly excited about Kent State. I'm not going to get overly negative about Kent State. We went out there and we did what we should do. We dominated them.
Exactly.
We had a higher time possession. We aired it out on both sides. We held them to less than we didn't give up a touchdown. We dominated on offense, so I'm not going to complain. I mean, yes, I have a couple gripes about JRP, nothing major, but the offense as a whole, I thought it was extremely balanced. And I mean, the fact is they set a single game record for 8.5 yards rushing attempt. That's the highest in UCF history for a single game. So the rushing attack was dominant.
Oh, we haven't even talked running backs yet. Oh my God.
Yeah, and then the passing game was good. It had its mistakes, but Roger, you pointed out a lot of the things that we did differently. I love that. Yeah, he wasn't forced. Last year, I felt like JRP forced the ball to Baker a lot just because he was our most talented receiver. Mm-hmm. The ball was spread throughout to multiple receivers. A lot of guys were open. I love the 2-minute drill, like you said. I mean, that touchdown to Alec Collar when we had about 2 minutes left, Alec Collar caught a touchdown with, I think, 45 seconds left to go before halftime, was an amazing 2-minute drill. Everything that I really wanted to see between balance, spreading the ball, the run game, the pass game, the 2-minute drill was all there. So for me, I give the offense overall a very strong grade. Like I said, if we do that against Boise or Kansas State, I'll be a lot more excited. But overall, it was fine. It was the game one. We went out, we dominated a lesser opponent. Game over. Let's move on to week 2.
All right. Josh Lazar, I'm sure you have something to say about all of this. What is your general thoughts?
I'm always last, so I'll try to be tight too in the segment. So
that's not true. That's not true.
So listen. I'll be tight. Alan is the Blake Bortles of fans, not too high, not too low, which is great. It's what we really need here. And to what you said, Roger, the longest drives of the game were the first and the last drive of the game, and the first one was barely a shade over 4 minutes. Everything was Scott Frost level fast. It was hurry, right? As we saw on Gus's license plate.
Which was at the facilities this evening. It was there. Yeah, it was. Okay. His car was there. His BMW. Yeah, he's driving a BMW. He's upgraded from the truck with the birds.
There we go.
So
there's a Land Rover, I think, on game day.
Yeah, no. His car was there and I drive that way to drop my kids off, in Oviedo because they live there. So I cut through the park, through the drive there. And so it was there at 3:00. It was still there at 8:30 tonight. So he's working hard, folks, for your dollar.
Yeah, it should be for your 7 figures. So I will talk also to the balance, right? I took this picture because I was a little shocked when I saw it. At 5:06 left in the fourth quarter of this game, we had 334 yards passing and 334 yards rushing. Dead even. So what I saw from this offense was pretty much everything I wanted to see. I mean, it looked. I want to talk more defense too, right? We'll get there. But from the offense, we saw very solid play. What is it? 85. I forgot his name. I just pulled Zach Marsh-Wohan. It was Holler and Wohan on the field on first quarter and multiple drives, having multiple 2 tight end sets. There's just a lot to love. There was a lot to love. And I know the statistics look great and all that. Most of what I liked was wonderful. Baker didn't get anything until about the end of the first quarter and then kind of went off a bit. I mean,
it was mid-second quarter.
Oh, the second quarter. Yeah, it was second quarter. I think in the text talk, you were like, oh, he hasn't gotten a catch yet. And then literally the next play. And then more and more and more. So it wasn't just, blinders on focused on one wide receiver. And that's why I said earlier, we have probably about 5 wide receivers that are solid and 5-ish running backs if you count JRP as one at times there. So the weapons are there. Things are going. The offensive line looked like was starting to gel. I think that was pretty solid. You can't have 336 plus on both sides without the O-line doing what they do. So it looked great. Now again, and this is nothing to Kent State as a university. They had such a deep turnover in both staff and athletes that I mean, it would be hard for any team to do well with a brand new staff and a brand new set of athletes. Unless
we've got a brand new staff. We got a brand new coordinator on both sides of the ball. What are you talking about?
Not the players.
Not the
players.
Players.
I didn't say the players.
University.
I said staff. I said
staff.
Yeah.
The exception is Deion Sanders, right? Colorado has the same setup, but they have a lot more money than Kent State. So in cachet with
TCU as well.
Yeah, I mean,
both of our coordinators have worked for us in the past, though. So
yeah. So I am a little more than cautiously optimistic, and maybe that's the fan in me, but I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Okay, I'll be more specific. That's the UCF fan in you, because how long did high expectations and we crashed and burned. All right, so I know I want to say this about that, folks. Temper everything we've said with it was Kent State.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Asterisk.
It was
Kent State.
Kent State.
Please.
So yeah, just yes, there were a lot of great things in this game. If we continue to do that, then you have something really, really good to be excited about. One thing I will point out, a lot of Kent State's players were new to the team, but were P5 players that played at previous schools. Michigan, Ohio State, I think Georgia. There were other schools. So these were not chumps from a size perspective or anything else.
They might do pretty good.
Speaking of players that have not, they just didn't have depth. Speaking of players that have not played together, our O-line, PFF, their grades, a lot of those in the 70s, and on I think it was passing downs, it was in the 70s, so they held up a little bit better. The rushing, I think most of them were in the high 60s. So they actually had better numbers than they had against equivalent talent last year. So definitely new folks. You definitely saw a few bits of miscommunication. Our center, okay. I don't know if you watched the game on TV, but our center, I love that guy. He's just happy. I think he played at Stanford before. And so seeing this many people in a stadium, I think just drove him crazy because he played 4 years at Stanford, super smart guy. And this many points being poured on anyone, I think also got him super excited. Watch that guy. He appreciates being here. He's super excitable. He's running around on touchdowns. He's just freaking out. It reminds me of Alex Ward on that one touchdown that Mike Hughes run had where he's jumping across the screen, whatever. Yeah. So it's that's our center. So, but overall O-line performance, again, it was against Kent State. I did see some breakdowns. I think a lot of that is communication and them learning to gel together. I did see, I also saw that Kent State, the D-line did some things that I don't think we were expecting either, that the O-line had to adjust to. So overall, I feel like they had a good first game with 3 new guys and 1 guy that had been playing his position for a week and a half. Thoughts on that, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the O-line for having, 3 new starters played really well. I mean, it's like Josh said, if you have 300 plus yards, they did something right. Like I said, I was curious to see how Bula Schmidt would play moving over from center to left guard, and I thought he played really well. also, like you said, the D-line probably did give us some different looks, but one of the first things I said as soon as when I put the game on TV is we just look bigger than them. And that's what you see kind of with, P4 schools versus G5. I mean, I think a lot of times starters can line up well, but you have that depth that isn't with those G5 schools, that's not there. And that's where you start to wear them down. And we just looked overall bigger than them. But I thought the O-line for game one coming in, I guess, cold with 3 new starters with, Paole and Tylen Grable as the only returning starters played really well together. We're going to see that tested next week against Boise State and as the season wears on. But once again, I think we just were flat out bigger than them. I think we were going to dominate them. I don't know the pressure numbers, but I don't think JRP was pressured too many times. In the time that he was obviously able to escape with his mobility. But overall, I was, happy with the O-line performance. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. I mean, they had a couple slip ups that I noticed. I think there was something in the second quarter, and obviously that drive that stalled when we punted had a couple bad mistakes. And then there was a couple areas they could probably improve. But overall, I thought for, 60% of the O-line being brand new, I thought they played pretty well and they meshed decently. And I think that chemistry is going to only improve as the season goes on. But I think the pieces are there.
Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to one of my buddies, also former UCFO lineman, during the game, and he thought they played well. I kind of go to him a lot just because I'm not as familiar, and I was like, how do you think they played? I thought they played well for a new unit, and he said that as well. He said, obviously, there's things that, that they can work on. I think there were a couple of false starts, holdings, but, I mean, those are tic-tac either way anyway.
Well, there was 2 of those false starts, and they were both on number 72, who was the Kent State player,
Marcellus
Marshall, who transferred over and was playing against his own team. So some of that is that as well.
Yeah, so exactly. So you have those kind of things. But overall, like you said, for a new group, people have to understand O-line is very different than most positions. It's very dependent on the next guy next to you. If you guys are both blocking the same guys, a lot of the time that's not good. Unless it's schemed that way. So they're probably one of the only units as an individual unit where you're as good as all 5. Where if 4 guys are doing perfect and one guy does something wrong, a lot of people are just like, the O-line sucks. That's just the way that their life is. So for 3 new guys and just having not as much chemistry as far as starts with each other, I thought they played really well. And again, I'm not the biggest O-line kind of guy, but from guys that I trust and what they told me, they said they played pretty well. Now, again, like we just said, Roger, put an asterisk, it's Kent State. I think once we start getting into, Boise next week and then start getting into the Big 12 play, I think they're going to get tested. I think, going on the road is a lot different than playing at home. So I think they played well, which, again, I think that's what they were supposed to do. I think we'll be able to assess them a little bit better as other positions, as we get into the season and start playing the meat and potatoes of our schedule.
Meat and potatoes. Well, we're starting with the potatoes next week. All right. Dad jokes galore on this episode.
I set you up that one.
You did, and I don't think you even realized it.
I didn't even mean it until you started saying it.
All right, Josh, what do you got?
Listen, the meat's already off the schedule because we took care of the bulls for a while. So
bulls? You mean the cows?
Cows, whatever.
Hey, they take care of themselves, right? Western Kentucky. What did we say that?
They haven't won a game since COVID through an FBS team.
They've won one.
Sorry, they won 1 game in 3-5.
Give credit where credit's due. They've won 1.
Okay, so O-line, I think they did a darn good job for what they were up against, right? And I'm not talking Kent State. I'm talking about themselves. And I'm really talking about Lee Hunter and Kevin Call and Seliskar. And they've probably...
Hold on, that's D-line, bro. We aren't on D-line.
I know, but I'm sure they...
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Right? They probably practice against people way tougher than the people across the line in Kent State. So I think they did a great job gelling as best as possible. Again, asterisk, yes, but they probably went up against their own team tougher than probably what Kent State threw at them. So they were well prepared. Probably the scout team too. But again, let's see where we go in Boise when we'll talk about that later. But for Kent State, I think they did exactly what they needed to do.
And I agree. A lot of the things from that I referenced, that 2017 season, most of the time our hardest opponent was our
Scott
offense.
Frost. Yeah, was playing the triple option.
Yeah, our hardest thing was we'll get into that when he we'll get onto that one day. But yeah, I mean, you go back and think of some of these great UCF teams. You're talking. I think that year we were the number 1 offense in the country. Who's a better team to go against than Mackenzie Milton, prime Mackenzie Milton, Adrian Killens, Otis Anderson, Traquan. Sometimes that is your best reps. So, again, another testament to the O-line. Maybe they were taking those reps where, you're going against Lee Hunter and those guys throughout all camp. You're getting your butt kicked. You're kicking their butt a little bit, a couple of skirmishes, in the hot heat. Sometimes that is the best reps you're going to get. And to go out there and handle the unknown, I think that shows just the kind of O-line that they can be. Now, granted, again, it's Kent State.
And by the way, you said that, right? So, if you ain't fighting, you ain't trying. So during the summer,
absolutely.
During the summer,
there was sometimes you just got to test it. If you're not fighting, you're really. I mean, there's no way you're really pushing not only your unit but your team to get better. I'm not just sitting here to go out there and start throwing punches just because, but just it's so hard to go 20 plus days straight of hitting the same guys, 20 plus days straight of long practice, long meetings, long days. You get, we're dudes, we're going to get pissed off. You get shoved a little bit too hard one time, you know what, do that again tomorrow and see what happens. So if you're not really having those issues, to me, that builds your team confidence. It builds those. I mean, I can't tell you how many fights we got in just throughout my years. It was every day. And
all right. Okay, quick aside. Who did you bow up against that you either were afraid of or that whooped you?
All right, so this is how it is. I'm a DB. I'm a big guy in myself, but not compared to some of my teammates. You're talking Wyatt Miller, 6'7". You're talking some of these guys, 6'5", 6'7" monsters. So as a DB, you got to kind of pick your poison a little bit. I'll get into skirmishes and throw a couple of blows, but I'm gonna throw my little quick jab and take a couple of steps back to make sure I'm not getting pounded. So I guess I wouldn't say that we were really afraid of anybody just because we're not really gonna fight to that point. But I'll tell you, there's one guy you do not want to mess with, Jemias Pittman. If he is hot, if he's tired, don't piss him off. Don't hold Jemias Pittman too long. Him and Tristan Hill, I mean, those are some – we're going to talk about bulls, like bull in a china shop when they're mad. It's like they can be sloppy, but you push them the wrong way, it's like you just lit a match. Foul. Those are the wrong guys. You don't want to see those guys.
Love it.
Yeah, I could imagine Pittman was a handful, and I would imagine Tristan Hill was too. He was a handful when he was trying. That was the biggest thing.
Exactly.
With Tristan Hill. He took plays off, unfortunately. But those guys I definitely would not want to throw down with. Honestly, I wouldn't want to throw down with any of them.
No.
To be frank.
I was gonna say maybe Boomer, but no. I didn't even go down that part.
Listen, those guys are lifting so many weights.
Oh, who was the kicker? Who was the kicker?
Oh,
Matty Wright.
Matty Ice, right?
Matty Wright.
Which one? Oh yeah, we'll fat Matty.
No, it wasn't Matty Wright. No, not Matty Wright. Well, they were on the sideline. It was our third string quarterback.
Oh yeah,
not Matt.
Obarski,
kicker.
Obarski.
It was Obarski was the kicker.
Oh, and then it was the backup quarterback. It was the backup quarterback.
It's Quadri Jones.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you see, Quadri was a small guy to begin with in stature, right? So, so he picked on the kicker. So that's where you see a matchup versus a matchup, right?
Yeah, you just food for thought, people. If a guy's putting a ton of weight on his back, you don't really want to fight or mess with them. That those are the guys you just let those bears fight other bears. Don't bother them.
All right. That was a nice aside. So let's go ahead and move on to RJ Harvey's breakout performance and talk a little bit about running backs. RJ, I don't know if I'd call it a breakout performance, to be honest. We have it in our show notes as breakout, but I think we were all kind of expecting it, especially as of last year before he got hurt.
Yeah.
RJ's a unit, man, and he's fast, and he knows how to read his blockers because he's a former quarterback. So he's pretty good at seeing what defenses are doing. The big thing for me, he's got good burst for a running back who was a quarterback, right? Like he gets moving pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And the big takeaway for me for RJ was just, dude, stay behind your blockers. He was outrunning his blockers. He wasn't being patient enough, which he was last year, but not this game in the first and second quarter. Once he started waiting for his blockers, he was off to the races. I think we have our replacement running back for short yardage situations, Mr. McDonald. Speaking of units, that dude, huge. One, he carries the ball, carries the rock like a few running backs that we've seen in the past that were really, really good. But I think we've got our short yardage back. And then obviously, we talked about Johnny Richardson and his lack of touches last year. He got a whole lot of touches this game, and both he and RJ Harvey are getting much better at catching the ball out of the backfield and making it happen, which makes it double trouble. So, running backs, what are your guys' thoughts? We saw them all, and they all played really, really well. I would have ridden with any of those guys. And Lord knows 3 years ago would be like, okay, this is the best running back that's ever come through UCF. Well, not 3 years ago, maybe, because we had Otis and
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
We've had some studs.
We've had some studs come through, and even some that we aren't even talking about. But anyway, the point is, Kevin Smith too. How can we forget about Kevin Smith, right?
Yeah.
We're at this point, we're just talking about who's the second best if we're going to start talking.
I agree with you there. I think Kevin Smith is definitely number one in everybody's mind. Yeah, unanimous number one. Which, by the way, I wish he'd come back and coach over at UCF, but can't have everything. Happy with our coaching staff. All right, so running backs. Let's go with. Actually, Trey, since you're on the screen, why don't we go with you for running backs? What'd you see?
I think this might be the deepest position as far as from top to bottom. You could throw anybody in there and they are going to produce. I think that's probably the best position. Maybe receiver, with kind of Townsend emerging, but I think we're 4 or 5 deep of high quality guys. I love it. I thought they played well. I think the room they all have a skill set that complements the room. I think RJ is, like you said, he's the breakout guy, but I think he's the one that can do it all. We can get him in between the tackles. He can get a little bit outside. He can catch. He's showing he can catch a little bit, give you good bursts. But I like that we have the depth so we can keep him fresh. I think when we get into these closer games, we're going to need to lean on him a little bit. We're going to need to lean on just his talent as a player. But I was definitely happy to see Johnny Richardson get touches. That was one of the things we were kind of worried about just due to his pass protection. I don't think he was asked to do too much of it this game.
No.
But it's good to see Gus knowing his talent and how explosive he is as a player to kind of just manufacture touches for him.
Hold on. That wasn't Gus, bro. We got a new offensive.
Not Gus. Sorry. Darren Henshaw. Coach Henshaw. Coach Henshaw. I think that was good to get. I
thought maybe you were making a point without making a point there. So I just wanted to make sure we clarify.
No. I meant Henshaw. Yeah. So I'm glad to see him get touches. I think DeMarcus Bowman, I'm really excited to see him. I heard a lot of things about him in camp. I saw him in that spring game. He's got some juice to him. Former big time prospect. And then again, Jordan McDonald. He looks like a whole tank, man. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think him just he got his feet wet a little bit last year, but now I think he has his package. The Wild Knight, what they call it. He has his package that short yardage. Hey, buddy, go get us these yards. And I think he was 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, either on short yardage or fourth down. So I think the room is rounding out very well, especially early now. Granted, again, asterisk, it was Kent State. But I wanted to see if all these guys could produce. I didn't think there was any significant drop-off from either one of them. I think they all have different skill sets. So, we're not going to ask Johnny Richardson to do what Jordan McDonald does. That's just, to me, that's bad coaching. So I think that if we can keep that room going, I think that might be the strong suit that we lean on in these games that get close, or we're up by 7 or 8 at Oklahoma. 4 minutes left. That's the room we're going to lean on. That the O-line and the running backs, win us these games. And I think we have the guys to win these games late. And I think that's just a great thing to see early.
All right. Let's go, since Josh was complaining earlier. I'm going to put him in the next here. Oh, wait. No, I'm going to change my mind. Alan, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on. Go ahead, Alan.
So for me, running back has been our deepest position offense for about 3-4 years now, and that's going to continue this year. The room is absolutely stacked. Gus said at the beginning of the year that he had put his running back room up against any unit in the country, and I truly believe that. I mean, maybe outside of Michigan with like Blake Corum and a couple of those guys, I think we do have the deepest running back room in the country. I mean, you saw Mark Anthony Richards, who went in 2021, transferred over from Auburn, a 4-star, has 5 touchdowns in his first year, second on the team. Doesn't even play a single snap last year after being second on the team in rushing touchdowns. He comes in and scores a touchdown. We have 5 different guys score a rushing touchdown. Obviously, Harvey's going to be that workhorse, that 3-down back. But I mean, everyone on the team besides McDonald had at least an average of 5 yards per carry in that week 1 win over Kent State. That's going to be the strength of this team. Yes, we're going to try to balance the ball more, but like Trey said, we're going to lean on that unit when we need to. If we need to waste some clock, grind it out. We have so many names there, so much talent in there. I mean, yes, you go back to 17 with Killins and Otis and McCray, but this is up there. I mean, DeMarcus Bowman is a former 5-star guy, and he's like the 3rd string running back. So in my mind, we kind of have like 5 RB1s, or, a mix of RB1s and RB2s. I mean, this was a fantasy team. You'd be taking a lot of UCF Knights for running back. So I was super impressed with them, but I was expecting that. I still think they're going to be a strength. Like others have said, a lot of people think we have a ton of talent at wide receiver. I think there's a hard drop off after the wide receiver 3, but running back is stacked. We showed it. Johnny Richardson got his carries, led the team. Obviously, Harvey looked good. The reason I had Harvey as kind of a breakout performance, that was his first receiving touchdown of his career, and he looked amazing on that run, that 50-yard touchdown pass. I thought he showed some serious moves in his receiving abilities that we did not see last year. Last year, he had one game where he had 7 receptions, but other than that, the most he had all season was 2, and I think he had like maybe a 30 or 25-yard game receiving. So for him to break out with a 50-yard receiving touchdown, asterisk, Kent State, yes, but I thought they showed a lot of versatility. And like Trey said, there is guys that can do everything. We have some big bruisers, kind of like the Jordan McDonald. We have the quick, shifty guy like Johnny Richardson. We have the 3-down back like RJ Harvey. And then you throw in Mark Anthony Richardson, DeMarcus Bowman. The room is absolutely stacked, and I'm super excited about them. And it's like we have depth there for days. If someone goes down, I'm not worried about it because we have a bunch of ballers there, and they did exactly what they should do in that game. And that's an A+ for me for the season and for game 1.
All right. So I think that will be the descriptor that we'll be using all season is super exciting running back room.
Oh, yeah.
Also something that's super exciting, our favorite Duke football team, which I've mentioned several times.
They're beating Clemson.
Are beating Clemson 13-7 with 6 minutes left in the third. If they can hold on to that, that would be hilarious considering how much noise Clemson has been making about moving out of the ACC, which we will talk about later. So, Josh.
Look, our running backs, and you got me now on like all that other stuff. Our running backs are amazing. Our running backs are amazing. Since I'm after Allen, I'll do some stats. Every running back who's had more than one touch also had a reception and 0 drops across the board. Every single one. And the one that didn't, MAR, just, they had it one time and he got a touchdown, right? So this running back room is amazing. Amazing. End of story. They're amazing. As long as we can get the holes opened up from the O-line, and as long as they can hold back a little bit waiting for that to happen, it's going to be a problem. And, it's not like we have 4 people in the O-line and no depth anymore, or little depth, right? We have that too. So I am really excited to see how this offense is going to work, because JRP is hitting a lot of targets. The running back room is deep. He's allowed to hit more than one target. And we have deep wide receivers too, because we had a couple of them that also had runs, right? But, Xavier Townsend had a 28-yard run, right? I mean, it's not just them. So and again, I said 5.5 running backs because, JRP, ran for 92. It's not like he's a slouch there too. And I know that's earned yards and not standard, handoffs or sweeps or whatnot, but he still did get 92 of his own yards, right? So it is stacked. They are wonderful. I can't wait to see. I hope they are all going to have this type of mix where we have like maybe 10 or 12 attempts or the most maybe 15, and they're all getting to play, because it both keeps them engaged in the game and active in the game, and taking a really deep room and giving them the tools they need to succeed for both the team and the student athletes themselves individually. So A+, done.
I like it.
All right. Awesome. Now that we've talked about that, I think we kind of talked about the play calling from Henshaw. And for those of you that were doubting, Henshaw was calling the plays. Old Gus Rooney, I don't know if you saw it, but on the broadcast, he had his mic away from his phone and actually got picked. Yeah, he got
picked off.
Yeah, no, he was filmed picking his nose. So clearly he was not calling the plays while picking his nose. So he had to have a little bit of distance so that microphone was yeah, he's a quick blinker, guys. Henshaw definitely called the play. Again, saw some wrinkles. We already talked about that earlier. We don't really need to talk about anything else, I think, in my opinion, with regard to Henshaw, because we won't see what he's going to do until we start playing some stiffer competition. So that brings us to the defense. So we've been kind of hitting around this the entire time. Again, super basic vanilla defenses, super basic vanilla defenses, super basic vanilla defenses. However, we showed multiple fronts. We had 3-4 and 4-3. We had 2 guys' hands in the dirt. We had ends. We had an end that dropped back into coverage. We had a night position. So, again, we made adjustments at the half. I don't know if you guys saw that, but the first half, it was even more vanilla than vanilla. It was basically the same lineup every single time. After the half, there were some adjustments that were there. You saw the defense tighten up in the second half. Kent State was not as successful with the run game in the second half. I think at one point, their quarterback, who was also, by the way, a P4 transfer from the ACC, he had 15 incompletions in a row. So, part of that was pressure. We were getting a lot of pressure once we adjusted in the second half. The other part of it was things like our defensive back, to Jordan Mask, and his amazing interception Also noticed on the DBs, they were looking back for the ball. So it's almost like they learned how to be coached up for defensive back this season. They actually looked for the ball. There were a couple of plays where they were burned. Braden Marshall, saw him out there quite a bit. Our true freshman, he got burned a few times, but he's learning very quickly.
Welcome to college football.
Yeah, welcome to college
That's
football.
all right.
You might be a 4-star in Florida, but hey, college football is college football. And, so overall, I think that you saw a lot more contested balls, a lot more times where guys were making a play on the ball versus last year versus making a play on the body. So there's a lot of improvement on the DB side of things, but because I don't like to say but, we were playing without safety help on a lot of these possessions too, and we were playing press, right? So we weren't not everybody was playing press. You had the strong side, usually was giving them a little bit of cushion, but the weak side, you saw that guy playing press the whole time, and what they were trying to do was keep the play from going to that side of the ball and pushing it into potential double coverage and giving our defensive linemen time to get up the field. So when you see those kinds of things, those are done for a reason. There was a lot of changes that I saw there. Our linebacker play was pretty good. We were filling gaps pretty well. Again, it's Kent State. However, considering we had nothing to game plan off of, we made adjustments in the second half. I was very happy with how they played and saw a lot of really good things that I liked, including Lee Hunter playing the entire game, which means that, hey guys, we were talking about his conditioning. They said it was better. He was out there. He was a man. He was a man out there.
He's a force.
And he was dancing. And not only that, but they had to double team him, which means other folks had opportunities to get in there. He was also our leading tackler this game, by the way. So for someone who's got his hand in the dirt to be your leading tackler, that says a lot about his performance. So, all right, that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to go with Trey. Trey, we're going to kind of give you the floor and let you run with this, considering that you are a defensive mind. You've talked about the cornerbacks. I'm interested to hear about your thoughts on the cornerbacks, linebackers, and especially what you saw that you liked that was different from last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll preface, I thought the defense was very vanilla, but the thing about defense, keeping it vanilla, one, you don't want to give away everything, just like we've been talking. But two, you let your guys just play faster. Defense is very simple. It's for the simple-minded guys. It's run, hit, get the ball. I think we did that. I don't think we necessarily tackled and wrapped up very well. Overall, I think there were a couple of things that I call them first game jitters, that you try to kill everybody. You try to get the big hit on everything. You kind of forget to use your arms when you tackle. But like you said, Roger, I think I saw a lot of the things that I wanted to see that I didn't see last year, mainly making plays on the ball. Mask 13, that was an amazing play. That's what with the greatest teams at UCF, that is what I can say is our strength. Yeah, we could play man, but we were a group that would go get the football, whether it be when we tackle, second guy come rip it out, or when you see that ball in there, we're going to go get interceptions. Even though I think that was the only interception that we had.
Yeah.
Like Roger mentioned, a huge difference of just playing through your man and turning around when you're in position and looking for the ball. I think that kind of confidence, that kind of just doing it constantly, you get a lot more comfortable doing it. And those are the things that lead to interceptions, because now you're comfortable looking for the ball. You're not freaking out because you can't see the receiver. Perfect parallel, Braden Marshall. He's an amazing player. He's going to be an amazing player. You could tell he freaked out a little bit on the PI because he played it perfect. Perfect position. He was in phase with him, what we call in phase, where you're running with the receiver. honestly, all he had to do was turn around and he would have had a pick himself. It would have fell right in his lap. But I think just, again, welcome to college football. Like the game moves a little bit faster. Even though it's Kent State, the game is moving faster than, the high schools you're playing, the 13-year-old, 14-year-old receivers you're guarding as a senior versus now the 20, 21-year-old guys you're guarding. And I think just seeing that difference in the guys of going to make plays on the ball as a defensive back room, I think that's the perfect first step. And I think that's going to be paramount into the success we have as a defense, trying to get our, get the offense that we just talked about, putting up 700 yards. You get them 1 or 2 extra possessions a game. Sometimes that's the difference. You can give up a lot of yards and you're going to get beat just in this era of football. But if you can get 1 or 2 turnovers, I think that's perfect. Up front, I think, like I mentioned earlier, they had a different scheme for their RPOs. It's a lot more dragged. So I'm just going to talk to the guys. Lee Hunter, you can tell that big boy's in shape. He took his conditioning serious this offseason. It's early, but the fact that you can go out there and – because I could see some of the guys were, they're hot, they're tired. He was out there, played every snap, and he was playing with his hair on fire. Ricky Barber, he played with his hair on fire. I think the defensive front is going to anchor us. I think we're going to mix up a lot of things in the back end, but I think – kind of like what we mentioned in the group chat was just, hey, if we can get it done with 4, let's get it done with 4. I think if those guys can control the game like that, let them loose. And, I think that'll just help us all. So overall, again, asterisk, it's Kent State, but I think the basics you want to see as a defensive unit, they showed us. They're going to run the football. They're going to play violent. At least that's what I thought. I thought they played violent. I thought to be prepared for a team, you have really nothing to expect from them with a new OC. You don't really know what they expect. They played very well. And, of course, my DB room, those guys are making plays on the ball, turning around, looking for the ball. And you could tell those guys are talented. They're a very talented group. And I think the sky's the limit for them if they can just put it all together.
So the funny thing is when I played, the scuttlebutt was you played DB when you were a receiver who couldn't catch. And so Mask's catch was more receiver-like than DB because he laid out for it and made a great play on that ball. Yes. It's kind of interesting for me to hear you kind of pick up on very similar things. And the fact that Malachi Lawrence, we were talking about all these other guys, but Malachi Lawrence, redshirt sophomore, I believe. Yeah. He was a big name that we brought in, and he's starting to play up to his billing. Walker got some play. It was funny because the coaches were like, "Oh yeah, he got a reality check on how fast the college game goes," but it's going to make him speed up his progression pretty quick. So exactly, this was about John getting some licks in a real game. He got that now, and now it's about speeding up his development. All right, Alan, any thoughts from you on the defense? I'm sure you've got stats for us.
Yeah, I mean, the defense did what they were supposed to do, similar to the offense. Gave up less than 250 yards, under 100 rushing yards. Kent State only rushed for, I think, 2.4 yards per carry. So the D block was awesome. I agree. They're going to anchor our defense. They're going to be the strength. We all talked about the depth that we have there. The starters all came back with, Barber, Morris Brash, all those Celiscar, and then guys like Malachi Lawrence and John Walker, and Matthew Alexander all coming in, rotating. And, I saw a lot more rotations, which I thought was great. They played lights out. The secondary, I think, Mask's interception was amazing. That might've been the best interception since Trey's interception against Memphis in the conference championship game.
Wow. Butter him up. Just butter him up. Turn him over. Butter him up on the other side. Keep it going.
No, but Roger, you said it like it was like a receiver's interception. It was
his really was a lot more impressive.
Well, we talked about in our week one podcast.
Trey. His was definitely more impressive. Not more impactful, but more
impactful and impressive, completely different. Yeah, impressive.
100%, 100% true.
Well, we talked about wanting the DBs to kind of, pick routes and not just, have deflections and all that. And that was an impressive interception. Gus did say after the game that they used more rotations in the secondary. And I think you saw that was by design, that they wanted to get some younger guys in. They actually have depth there this season. They had, 4 transfers come in, like we talked about. So I think overall, I saw the same thing. There were some missed tackles, and maybe that was, like you said, Trey, trying to just go kill people, try to get those, try to hit harder. But yeah, there were some missed tackles. They didn't wrap people up. I saw some of the same mistakes last year from Corey Thornton that he made again in this game. There was a couple guys that got burned. Braden Marshall, I think, Roger, you mentioned that, which wasn't too impressive. But maybe that's first game jitters. I think defense overall didn't play.
Playing his
freshman
first
mistake.
game.
Oh, yeah.
What that was.
That's why I said, welcome to college football.
Welcome to college football. Overall, I thought the defense played good. They did what they were supposed to do. They didn't give up a single touchdown, only 2 field goals, held them to under 100 rushing yards, under 250 yards total. So it was a good game overall, but I still saw some of the same issues from last year in this game, obviously on a smaller scale because we whooped up on Kent State. It'll be interesting to see how they play against like Boise State. They just had a receiver that went for over 125 yards on a touchdown. Real impressive guy. He's in his second year there. He looked really good as a freshman, had like 800 yards. For the season. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's going to be a lot tougher than some of Kent State's guys that all were just transfers or freshmen playing. So overall, I thought the defense played pretty well. They had a couple issues, but you held the team to 6, and you got a lot of guys that got to play and a lot of guys that got to get repetitions in. So I give the defense like a B+.
And one of those field goals, I don't know if you guys remember it, like hit the bottom of the goalpost and kind of trickled over. So it could have been 1.
and also, like you guys said too, they were throwing a lot of stuff at us that we hadn't seen. And Gus mentioned that in the press conference, and then they were able to adjust that in the second half. I mean, he said that they had a really good game plan. He complimented them on that. They threw some ripples at us that we hadn't seen before, and then I thought we adjusted really well after that one drive where they had the touchdown that got called back, or that really long play that got called back. After that, we really seemed to adjust, and we shut them down.
And to me, that's the key. I think that's what separates great coaches, just what I've seen, how fast. I was talking to Roger about it. If you can adjust to things that quickly, you're going to be successful, because sometimes it takes guys a quarter, 2 quarters, sometimes 3 quarters to really kind of understand what's going on. Whether that be the players kind of did take it or the coaches. The fact that I don't know exactly who's making the adjustments. Obviously, I'm not on the field, but how quickly, like you said, they adjusted after that long touchdown pass. It was like, they got off the field that drive. And it was like they were just like, this is what they're doing. We've seen 2 or 3 drives. This is how they're trying to attack us. And it was like they fixed it then. I think that's very impressive to be able to make those adjustments that quickly.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, Josh Lazar, you're up, and it looks like you have an update.
Yeah, I was about to say, talking about good defense, Clemson was at the 1-yard line, fumbled, and Duke ran it back about 55 yards, and they're now in the red zone again. So at least exact times we are recording this, right? Right. But
so here's the problem, right? They ran down their own field and touched Howard's Rock. Like our baseball team did.
Oh yeah,
and threw it completely off. So threw their complete.
Oh god, yeah, that didn't help. So I can't tell any listener more than when you, Roger, and Trey Neal are talking about defense, right? That's just not going to happen. What I can tell you is that D line in our chat when we were at the game, like when Lee Hunter ran down the QB, it was like all cat like that. That just doesn't happen often, and definitely not the Lee Hunter from last year, who you saw it, but he needed to get in shape, and everyone knows that, right? And that's great, because once he did, oh my god. It's amazing. So and then the first 3 plays of the game were all tackles and all on the line. So it just, I'm not saying we don't need the back 7, right? But I will tell you that I loved seeing it, and it felt like the team as a whole were aggressive. They didn't and don't get me wrong, Kent State in that first half, they were making some progress. They weren't scoring points or a lot of points, but they were making more progress than I expected. But that ended about at the second half, right? I loved what I saw. I loved almost everything I saw. There's definitely stuff on the back end that will probably get cleaned up. I'm sure jitters. There's things like that. That sounds about right. But man, it's just that I can't remember a D line that was just this good in quite some time. Maybe it was
2017, baby.
Exactly. Maybe that's the callback. It was 2017 probably, and Pittman, man, was a beast. Maybe then, but that means it's been a hot minute, right? And I loved everything I saw, and Duke scored.
Speaking about a short minute, Duke scored. So 21-7. All right. So you also mentioned our cell phone thing. So we're trying to start a new segment. I know we're going along here, so I'm going to be really quick with this. But it's called Text Talk. I will keep out the non-family friendly texts that are included in here. But here's one. Casual K-State fan next to me picking up the Big 12 stragglers for Kent State. So, yes, we had Big 12 fans there at the first quarter, which kind of sucked because he left after the first quarter. But he was there for our game. So we're starting to pick up some of the other Big 12 fans. Jesse Wolf from Odang Hummus was there. For those of you that follow our sister show, UBT Live. So remember to check us out. That's all about business. This is all about fun. So, make sure you check out that show. Our good friend Jesse Wolf was there. Our stadium has Spaceballs because of the two new radar dome looking things that are up there that help with the AT&T. It does remind me of the helmet.
Dark helmet. Yeah, that's great.
And then there were some things that I can't mention after that. I asked where Nugget was. By the way, I saw her on the broadcast. So she was walking down pregame in the concourse. So unlike someone who texted me that she had gone to the glue factory in the sky, she is still around and she is still greeting people. So if you'd like to see Nugget, just be there pregame. Game day ops still G5.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
They didn't even do Zombie Nation with some expletives. JRP started with a completion, shut down the season. Baker had no idea what the play was before the TD, and he still got open.
Yeah. Oh no, that was me, 100%. He was waving down and going, basically shrugging in the middle of the play, and got wide open. But the play wasn't to him. It's probably why he didn't know what the play was.
Trey was turned. This was this was about 7:17 p.m. So Trey was turned already by that point. Consider this the competition, but it's going to be a long day for them. Nice thing is my cell service works because my cell service actually worked during the game. Someone said, blame it on the Spaceballs. And the refs were having a little time with a tough time running with the running clock. So again, we don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to do a better job of picking.
Oh, to release Roger.
Of course, it's shocking that we get a frozen Roger. Another thing that he didn't put in there is that I don't know if it was because I'm faculty at UCF, so I had their Wi-Fi too. But I was like both in that chat, and I was on LinkedIn at the side when we were on timeouts, and I actually got some posts on LinkedIn and I tagged Roger on them. So I was trying to do double duty for both podcasts.
Yeah, nice.
Well,
nice,
we can move into the Boise State preview, right?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
So we obviously week 2, coming off our win here against Kent State, we play Boise, who is coming off a blowout loss to number 10 Washington. They got pretty much manhandled. I think the final score was 56-14. Boise was in the game early. They had a real early lead, and then the wheels came off, and Washington, probably as expected, kind of took over there. They were at home there and won that game. So we go up to Idaho, play them on the blue field. So what are your guys' expectations and keys to the game for Boise State?
Well,
go ahead, Josh. We'll let you go first right here.
I'm on the screen and mine as well. So look, so there's a lot of things when I was looking at this game that was interesting. So our record versus Boise State so far is the same as our record versus Alabama, 1-0. So
Yes.
we're doing good there, right? And it's interesting. They gave up 50 last game. Last time they gave up 50 points at home, it was COVID there, early COVID. It was against number 9 BYU in 2020 in November. So they don't give up this big of a score a lot. And to me, the keys of the game are really to come out strong. I think we need I was intrigued in the Kent State game when we won the toss. We took the ball, and maybe because it was Kent State, right? If we win the toss during this game, I don't know what we're going to do. I think we might grab the ball. Don't know, but I want to see us come out strong. And truthfully, I think the main key to this game is going to be containing number 2 for Boise, for Boise State. Yeah, that running back is good. He is really, really good. And I think if we contain him, I think that will make them have to pass more, and we'll see what happens when some of their rhythms get disrupted. We'll see if we can even do it, right? But I think that's definitely a key to the game, because he's wonderful. And lastly, and this is probably Trey's mantra, right? Protect the football. And that's across, right? We can't have a negative turnover ratio in this game. I just +1, I think, would be wonderful. So take it away. Yeah, we always love to do that, but we definitely need to protect the football. And I've heard Gus on interviews talking about that. Like, as a running back room, we're protecting the football more. Yeah, we know JRP needs to protect that a little bit more too, right? And I expect a better JRP in that area. I just do. So to me, I think if we come out strong and we continue that momentum, we contain number 2, their really stud running back, and protect the ball, everything is going to come together.
Yeah.
Trey?
Yeah, I mean, I watched that Boise game. They like you said, Alan, they were in it early a little bit. Kind of had the crowd at Washington out of it a little bit, but I mean, once I think the straw broke the camel's back, and it was just a monsoon. They just got destroyed. I think similarly, that's kind of how we're gonna have to play. Except this game's on the road. I think we're gonna have to go on the road and kind of hit them in the mouth. Because one thing you guys know about home games, you do not want to get the crowd into it. You don't want to let these kind of guys linger along. I think just as a talent for talent kind of thing, I think we have a lot more talent than they do. I think from top to bottom of a roster, we are a better roster. Now, with that, I think you let these kind of teams hang around, because they're a well-coached team. They always have been. You let them hang around. You give them a couple of turnovers. You give up a couple of big plays. You let the crowd get into it. You might be in a dogfight. And I don't think that's the kind of game you want to be, so far away from home in Idaho where, I don't know what's going on in Idaho. I don't know what there is to do in Idaho. I think the Boise State game, that's their big game of the week. I think there are going to be a lot of people that want to come see that game. So you just want to go out there and handle your business. I think it's a good opponent. I don't think we should have problems with them. I think from what I saw from our guys, they're going to be locked in. As Roger mentioned earlier, they're practicing at the Masters Academy in Orlando, which they have blue turf, kind of to acclimate. And yes, it does make a difference, just because it's one of those things, kind of like white noise. You normally don't really hear white noise. You can kind of go about your day with white noise. That's what we think of a green football field with grass. You don't really think anything of it. You see a blue football field, you kind of feel different. You might not feel the dimensions kind of feel off. I know another reference to basketball when they play in a normal arena versus they play in like the football stadiums. The depth perception's kind of off. You know, all those things, they do matter, even though they're so minute in the grand scheme of things. It's different if you're not used to it. So I think if our guys just go out there, handle their business early, kind of get the crowd, take the air out of the stadium, and then just keep rolling, I think we should beat them soundly. But if we don't, it's one of those things where kind of the role we used to play back in our early stages of let us hang around a little bit too long, you know, we'll make some magic happen. You know, I think our next step in this process of becoming a top 10, top 25 school is like we did last week. You know, we should beat Kent State. I think we should beat Boise State, and I think we should beat them handily. Go handle your business. You know, kind of like what you said last week, Alan. You know, punch them in the mouth early and step on their neck and handle their business.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think Boise, obviously, like we've all said, is a step up in competition from Kent State. I mean, look, the spread in this game, UCF's only favored by 3.5. So this isn't like, Boise, like Kent State, where we were favored by 35 or 36 points. Boise tends to do this. Boise last year, they played Oregon State in the opener at Oregon State, lost by 3 touchdowns. And then what happened? They ended up winning 10 games like they always do. They always seem to kind of rebound. Obviously, I think we're obviously a great opponent for them. And it's good. They're going to be tough. I mean, Boise's always tough. They win 10 games every year. Maybe they're in the Mountain West and beat up on lesser opponents, but we've seen them, like you said, Trey, they're kind of like us. They if they hang around, they're going to slay a giant. They tend to get upsets. And if their crowd gets into it, it's going to be a dogfight. And it's -3.5 for a reason. I do agree with you that our talent is superior to theirs, but they have some ballers on that team. Like Josh mentioned, they have the running back. They have a great receiver. It's funny, their quarterback, Taylor Green, very similar to JRP. He's in his second kind of full year of playing of QB. He's a mobile guy. He rushed for 10 TDs last year, like 600 yards, but then only threw for like 2,000 plus yards, 14 interceptions, and 6 picks. Very similar stat line to JRP, like very, very similar. If you look at it, JRP had a couple more rushing yards than he did, but it's going to be a tough one. But I think what we saw, Washington blowing them out like that, even though it was at Washington, even though Washington's a top 10 team, I don't know if Boise is as good as they were last year when they won 10 games. So I think they're going to be a little bit demoralized, but at the same time, they're going to be motivated to come back, get their first win of the season. They're on their home field. So we got to be ready. Yeah, I think obviously win the turnover battle. I think JRP's got to obviously step up. And I think our defense really, I'm looking at our defense to shut them down early. I think that gets that momentum going. If we can, on the first few drives, keep them from scoring or limit them to a field goal, that's going to get us motivated to know, okay, hey, this game's going to go our way. So it's going to be tough. Like it was when we played them in 2021 at home. I mean, they started the game up like 21 to 3 or 27. And, and that was on our home field. So, they're going to be looking for revenge. So we'll see what happens, but we have the superior talent. We're favored in the game. We just got to kind of stay level-headed and take them out of the game early, but it's going to be no easy task.
Yep. And one more thing I wanted to pop in before we are we're welcome back by Roger for those of you who are watching this on video. To me, I think this is the Are You Back Bowl, right? Gus Malzahn was hired in 2021. So was Andy Avalos. Both head coaches are doing well, but haven't won a championship, doing well, but are they getting over the hump? And Washington just stomped them, right, in close proximity where they play football. And we're not doing that great when we go on the road. I think this might be the Are You Back Bowl, because if we go out there and do what we expect, we kind of get over some of the humps that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. If they come out and just somehow demolish us, there might be some pundits talking about it, right? So I think even if this is a closer game, I think the team that wins this game is going to get a big bump in a lot of areas, and maybe in just media pundits' minds in our conversations and podcasts. But I really think there's some alignment there too. You're talking about alignment kind of JRP, right? I think there's alignment on the head coach's side too. I think that's a very unique thing where both head coaches start same year, now having good, but not like, okay, this is a wow of a year. Both UCF and Boise State lost in a conference championship last year, right? So there's more similarities than you think.
Yeah. All right. Trey, have you talked about this yet? Considering,
yes, sir.
All right. And
we're going to buy you a second internet connector. That's all.
No, you're going to buy my parents, because again, I'm remote again this week. So I don't have these problems at home, and I am plugged directly into the modem. So this is I am going to call their provider out, Xfinity. Xfinity, if you want me to be a promoter of your internet services, please don't let them drop off every time I'm trying to host a podcast. Okay?
Classic Xfinity.
Yeah.
So
it's on you.
Now that I'm done. Now, on the other hand, T-Mobile, thank you for your mobile hotspot, because I am running a hotspot right now. So if you want to put something my way, you've saved 2 shows thus far, because I can't end the recording without me being in here. So guys would be talking forever. All right. So for Boise, a couple of things I took away. I watched the last game. They have a pretty good running back, Helani. He for 2 straight seasons, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. His first season, 1,000-yard rusher. His last season, unfortunately, got hurt in the game against Washington. So it'll be interesting to see if he's back, because what I did see from him, he's a pretty good running back. To me, it's going to be interesting to see defensively for Boise whether Washington was that good or Boise was that bad. They sold out on the run. They made Michael Penix, who was almost a UCF quarterback, play for win that game through the air, and win it through the air he did. So he did a great job. Was amazing to watch him play, especially in the second half when he really got it rolling. So for me, when we're talking about Boise, I think they just, were playing and they got whooped defensively, and that put them behind the 8 ball offensively. And their back is not that great of a passer. He's good dual threat. He can run. He's 6'6". So that throws his throw off, because, when you've got full wingspan extended, you're actually throwing down towards a lot of your receivers, which makes it more difficult for those receivers to catch versus throwing it up, and throws off his accuracy. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. He's not that good of a passer. So if we can, for me, what that means is if our D-line can contain the edges, force them up the middle, we can stack the box a little bit against them. As long as we can keep the quarterback contained and force that running game through the middle, we start scoring a little bit on them, it's going to be game over pretty quickly for Boise and the Fighting Smurfs from Idaho. So that's kind of what I saw out of the last game. And again, Boise had to play from behind, so they were throwing a lot of balls, and that makes things one-dimensional. When you're one-dimensional, you lose games, and things get out of hand pretty quickly. All right, so did we talk about the keys to the game for this game yet?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
What are yours?
So for me, keys to the game, get up early, score early, first few possessions, right? Defensively, keep their quarterback inside the box. Don't allow him to get outside, sideline to sideline. Drive their offense through the tackles, and if we drive the offense through the tackles with the 2 defensive linemen that we have anchoring the front, they're going to take up a lot of gaps, and I don't see them being able to run the ball on us there. And then offensively, if we can, again, use those levels to our advantage, if they sell out on the run like they did against Washington, then and I think they're going to do that because they think we're going to go purely rushing attack. So if we can do some quick slants to kind of open up the middle, that opens up our run game. We've got Richardson that was going sideline to sideline. They were Kent State was trying to keep us kind contained on the sideline to sideline action at the beginning of our game last week. If we can get Richardson bouncing outside and we get RJ Harvey, in the flats somewhere or around the flats towards the middle of the field, I think it's going to be a long day for Boise. So for me, I think that's just, not having a slow start, because if they don't have a slow start, they just got demoralized by Washington. They're going to be angry. If we start running the table on them and scoring on our first two opening possessions, I think it's game over pretty quickly for Boise. Now, it's an away game. It's on the Smurf turf. We are getting there a little early to acclimate. We are going to be practicing on a Smurf field over at Masters Academy, which will be good. I'm hoping, I'm hoping we can see there. By the way, Boise's uniforms and helmets were awesome last week. They're going to be wearing the Smurf turf blue, I'm sure. So I'm hoping we can find the receivers defensively. Just bottom line is, if get up early, get those first two possessions, score on those first two possessions, funnel them through the tackles, and just tee off. That's the biggest thing, because I don't have a lot of faith in their ability to pass. However, UCF has had a tendency in the past to make quarterbacks look like Heisman Trophy winners for some reason. So, Alan says Clemson's done. That's it for me for the keys to the game. Alan, why don't you go and remind us of what our score predictions were and who was closest to the pin?
Oh, from week one? Yeah. Let's do that.
I mean, we've only had one. So week one.
Well, we all know who won. That was easy. It
all
wasn't.
right. So we had Roger was 52-10. Trey was 49-3. Josh was 52-17. Alan was 52-14. So I think Trey, you were the closest for at least for the opponent score for sure.
Oh yeah.
Hold on. What was the total score differential there? So you said 49. We scored what? 56?
56-6. Yeah.
Okay.
So he had it closest defensively for sure.
So 7-point difference there from the actual score. And I was 52-10. So I was
42.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I was 4.
What are you adding?
I'm adding up the total differences. So I was off by 4 on one, right?
And I was 4 on the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 total.
All right.
Trey was
off
by 10.
Trey was 1. I was 2.
Oh, you might.
And then you guys.
Yeah.
I'm at the end, and that I expected that.
All right. So let's keep that going through the season.
Time. I didn't expect us to just not allow them to have the ball back. I expect one garbage.
Well, here's the thing: if they would have made their other field goal opportunity, I would have been closest to the pin by far, because that would have been 52-9. So
true, yeah, technically.
All right. So that being said, they didn't, which I'm glad for. Pick your poison score predictions for this week. So what that means is you pick your score prediction for this week against Boise, and what's the worst thing that could happen during this game for UCF. So, Alan, you're still up on the screen. What's your score prediction, and what's the worst thing that can happen?
I'm gonna go UCF 34 and Boise 24. And I mean, the worst thing that in my mind that can happen, obviously outside of health stuff, is just JRP look really bad in his first true test. I mean, we saw this is it follows a similar script to last year. In week 1 last year, we played a cupcake. JRP had 4 touchdowns. We're like, oh, cool. Heisman with the 1-0 in his name. And then he goes up against Louisville in week 2. We put up 14 points, and the offense looked awful. He looked awful. Granted, we did get some touchdowns called back in the game, but just in general, he didn't look great. And then the tide turned on him. So I am hoping in our first real test on the road that he shows he's ready to play. So the worst thing I want to see is him put up a less than 100-yard passing game, because he had 3 of those last year where he passed for less than 100 yards. I mean, against Georgia Tech, he passed for 49 yards. So, I mean, if we get the win, that's one thing. But if he's going to sit there and, Go revert back to old ways, pass for, have a really crappy passing game, completely rely on his legs, and we become one-dimensional, and we have basically a repeat of last year's offense. That, to me, is the worst thing that we could see against a credible opponent.
Okay, that'll be interesting because if they stack the box defensively, I'm not sure if that will be the worst thing for us to be able to see. So that'll be an interesting take. All right, Mr. Lazar, what do you think?
I got to wind this up a little bit because I wanted you to be on when I asked some of these questions. So, question: who is Boise State's current defensive coordinator?
I don't know.
I will tell you in just a second after the break. No. So they gave up 31 points at home. That was the most points they gave up at home in 2022. In 2021, they gave up 41 points as the most points. And they actually have a defensive coordinator that some of you might be familiar with. Eric Chandler is their current defensive coordinator.
Hold on. Chins?
I don't know if he's a DC. I know he's the D-line coach there.
Okay, so maybe I was reading the roster, so maybe that is incorrect. He's on the D, and I got it.
He's assistant head coach and D-line coach.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
Okay, so maybe that's part of it. So Chandler, those Ds since 2016 have only given up 50 points 4 times. I was at 2 of those games. Trey played in 3 of those games. And I just don't. That's why I'm couching all this. I don't see us.
Wow, Trey just threw you under the bus.
That's not it. 2 of those were against Michigan.
Trey played in 3 of those games.
Well, I mean, it's true. But he got tackles, right? I played in 0 of those games, right? But here's the thing. I just don't think Boise State is going to give up 50 again. I just don't. They don't usually give up that many points. They haven't.
We're not going to score 50 on them.
Long time, right? I just don't see that happen. They haven't done it at home in a very long time. So what I do think is going to happen is we're going to win. I think I'm splitting the most points giving up in the last couple of years at home. I'm going UCF 38, Boise State 24. That is what I think is going to happen. I don't believe this line. I know the bettors in Vegas and other places know everything. I just no. I feel like we're going to do well. I think we're going to do really well. I don't think it's going to be a 2 or 3 point game.
Roger, the spread is 3.5 UCF. We talked about that when you were off.
Yeah, I just don't see it.
Okay, that went up actually because it was 1.5 for Boise before, so the spread went up a little bit.
Let me see if it's changed. I looked at that earlier. Yeah, it's 3.5. Yep, that's what it's currently at.
All right, so just to do some corrections here for Josh Lazar, the defensive coordinator for Boise State is Spencer Danielson. You heard that right, Spencer Danielson, not Mr. Chenander. Although I think we might be better off based on Josh's analysis of Chin's and Trey's play while at UCF with Coach Chin's in this scenario. So, Josh, we might banish you to the shadow realm after all of this. So, Trey, why don't you pick your poison and give us your score prediction?
My score prediction, I'm a little bit close like you guys. I'm gonna say 37-21. I think, but I don't think it's gonna feel that close. That's just my personal opinion. I think we're gonna be ahead. I think we're gonna control the game. And then we're gonna take control of the game. The worst thing that I think could happen would be kind of like what y'all were saying earlier, is that JRP reverts back. I think they're going to do what you say, Roger. I think they're going to stack the box and say, hey, JRP, beat us with your arm. I think that's what they're going to try to do. And I think the worst thing that could happen is he reverts back to just backyard football and blocking in on the receivers instead of just being a point guard and facilitating. And then that would cause us to be in a dogfight or potentially lose a game. I think that's the worst thing that could happen.
All right. So I am a little bit more. So if you guys follow Nightline, you knew I was a little bit more conservative with my picks, right? But since this is a new show And I was not too impressed with what I saw from Boise last week. I think the teams are a little one-dimensional on both sides of the ball. Remember, we were seeing their best punch, and they didn't see ours at all. So with us having a new offensive coordinator and new wrinkles, I think we actually fare a little bit better because there's no game tape on what we're going to do. And I was also encouraged with what we were doing in the middle of the field and using the tight ends. So I'm going to say, well, first, my point. Well, actually, I'm going to give you a score prediction and then my poison. I'm going to say 42-28 UCF, because I do think Boise's going to get some scores in there. I don't know how my wild card is how well these cornerbacks consistently cover. Right, that's going to be picking my poison this week, because I think our D linemen are going to get push. I think we can keep them between the tackles, and I think we're going to be good there. I'm just hoping our cornerbacks prove their worth this game with press, because I think we're going to press because they're going to do a lot of short passes, 10 yards and then to the sideline, or, quick outs, or they're going to dump it in space in the flats to try to allow their running backs to get wild, because I think we're going to keep them contained between the tackles. If they flush the quarterback out and we lose contain, then there's a chance that he can drag out the play and some of the receivers are going to get loose. So I'm hoping we press on them, at the beginning, and keep pressing on them to kind of screw up that timing, give the defensive line time to track these guys down, the safety to crash down, or whoever's spying, or potentially the linebackers to come in and make those plays. And if we get in their head a little bit on the receiving end, I don't think they're going to have to revert to the quarterback and keeping it between the tackles, and I think we'll be up big. So worst, my poison, I've got 2 this week, is going to be if we don't score on our first 2 possessions, and if we allow their quarterback outside to get loose. Those are my poisons for this week. All right, so that wraps that up. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to do a real brief because we're getting into the 2 hour and 12 minutes, and I'm sure you guys are tired of us droning on. Let's do a quick Big 12 recap. Some people were disappointed. The Pac, for some reason, was 13-0 last week, which is the first time that's ever happened since 1932 for any conference. So kind of funny now that they're on life support. All of a sudden, they get their act together. For the Big 12, different story, 10-4. Key upsets were TCU upset by Colorado. What a heck of a game that was. Colorado completely started over, sort of, because, yes, there were a bunch of new players there. However, many of those players followed Coach Prime from, I think it was Jacksonville State, right?
Jackson State.
Or Jackson State, excuse me, to Colorado. So those guys have been playing together a couple of years, and a lot of them were already 4-star players. TCU, meanwhile, 80% turnover, a new quarterback who was meh for TCU. It just felt like Coach Prime had all the momentum. It was almost like Frost. Reminded me a little bit of Frost.
Yep.
The energy, you just weren't going to overcome it, and TCU came out timid. Baylor upset by Texas State. Come on, bro. Come on, Baylor. I picked you guys for a good game at home. Like, you were my exciting game. You got beat by Texas State. I mean, Texas State. Texas State. Don't do that.
San Marcos, Texas State.
Yeah. Texas Tech, Tortilla Tech upset by Wyoming. Wyoming was a pretty good team. It was an away. It was the first game. A little surprised by this because a lot of people were picking them as the surprise team to play for a Big 12 championship this year. They did not look like it against Wyoming. We'll see how they do the rest of the way. West Virginia loses to Penn State. Okay, so my biggest takeaway from that, the first half of the game, West Virginia had a pretty good defense and played pretty well. Penn State ran away with it towards the end. So the surprise for me there was West Virginia played as well as it did. So 10-4 overall. Houston, another disappointment for me. Houston, are you ever going to get it together? I think my comment in the text thread was the only thing Holgorsen has shown so far is his bald spot. So, sorry, Holgie. I'm in the same position you are. It's not always going to be there, but bro, you got to show us something that you belong in the Big 12 as a head coach. And you haven't showed it to us yet. So I'm hoping for Houston. They play better. Their stadium seemed a little bit more full, but you got to score more points, bro. You just got to do better than that. You're Houston. You're in the Big 12. You got to represent us a little bit better. However, 4-0 for the new schools coming in. BYU, a little questionable on their game as well. On to next week. I don't think it's an indication of how well the Big 12 will do the rest of the season, but definitely not what I was expecting out of the Big 12. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to the other big news for the week in conferences. The ACC grew by 2. The ACC, well, where I was going with that is 2 P4s and SMU. I mean, does SMU really count because they're the free filler that's offering them the championship, the championship or the tournaments for all the West Coast teams so that they can meet the East Coast teams in the middle and not fly all the way to the West Coast. Right. So that's how SMU fit. Are they? Do they really count? I mean, if you don't get any conference payout, right, other than sharing.
They will eventually, though, right?
9 years. 9 years. No TV revenue for 9 years.
Wow.
Now,
the point of that?
they're still getting basketball tournament credits while they were in, so they don't get anything from before, right? But once they join, they get a portion of that. They do get a portion of the college football media rights. I love how I think it was UC who said this. They said that they were on their quote that they were contributing. They were getting full or graduated share. However, they were contributing back to the conference for competitiveness for the conference and for a revenue share. So basically, they held Cal hostage and said, hey, Cal, hey, Stanford, you're not getting full shares. Oh, you're getting full shares, but you're going to pay that back to us to help us offset you joining. And you're also going to pay for a competitive fund so that you will pay a higher share to everybody else. So very interesting math, very interesting dynamics. I think overall for Stanford and Cal, it's a way to stay in P4. They were not going to be P5 with the Pac. They were not going to be able to pull that off. They were not going to join the Big 12. They're holding their nose up at the Big 12. And quite frankly, I'm happy they did because their institutional alignment is not anything for the Big 12. We've had enough people come in with the Pac-12, and 2 of those are already not aligned in Utah, who thinks they're too good for the Big 12. And Arizona State, I believe. So we didn't need any more of the Pac-12 mucking with our politics. We already had Texas and Oklahoma. We don't need any more of those. For SMU, last lifeboat. Memphis tried this unsuccessfully with the Big East. A few other schools have tried it. The Cows can't afford it. and they aren't playing well enough to be called up anyway. So for SMU, they've got enough donors that they can carry the weight themselves. They're essentially going to net the same that they would have gotten paid by the AAC with attorney credits and everything for those 9 years. And for now, they get our designation. So for them, it was a no-brainer. What does the ACC get? It gets a place to hold their tournaments. That's midway between. And academically, SMU's a pretty good school, so they get to hold their nose at anybody else that they would have to bring in. And most importantly for them, they've taken the teeth away from Florida State and Clemson because there was a composition clause. So Florida State and Clemson decided to leave. They dropped below 15 members. That triggers a renegotiation for the rest of the teams on the TV contract. However, if I were Florida State and Clemson and I truly had a home, I would also be negotiating with them saying, hey, you guys are covered, so there isn't as much of a material cost to you. You've got your own folks that you proactively brought in that we voted against. You did that in your own interest, not in ours. So, hey, you need to reduce the payout, and that way we can leave earlier. To me, this sealed the deal for FSU and Clemson leaving. Interestingly enough, North Carolina and NC State did not vote together as a block. So that tells me I don't think NC State truly has a home in the SEC as everybody was speculating. Those other three schools, I think they do. So that's what I take away from all of this. I think it's crazy that we're in a position where we've got two schools on an island with the ACC, which is the Atlantic Coast Conference, with most of the schools on the Atlantic coast or Atlantic seaboard. I mean, that's about as far away as you can get from that regionality. The Big Ten at least has some people in the Midwest. And, so reaching out to the West, you're not crossing the entire country. So very, very interesting stuff. Looks like that solidifies, at least for now, the P4 for the time being, which I think ultimately is better for a negotiating block in the upcoming championship negotiations for the playoff. So that's all I've got to say about that. Anybody else have anything to say about the ACC's recent move?
They're trying to protect themselves, but whether it's 2036 or 2030, at some point, lots of the people in the ACC are going to be gone. Maybe it's only 3 or 4, but at some point, when the grant of rights are up or the cost is low enough, it's going to go away. Now, I actually at Waffle House after the game last week, I had a conversation with FSU fan and just guarantee you by 2025, FSU is out of the ACC and the All Coast Conference, I'm guessing. And the reality is, how I just don't understand how all these FSU fans that I've seen and heard think they're going to get out of this grant of rights. I just don't see it. But man, I get academically, I'm sure most schools in the nation would love to be aligned with Stanford. They are the number one, all but football, sports conference at a sports university. Like, they're great at a lot of Olympics. They're a good university, but it's not great. You see a lot of the athletes pushing back. This is not what they expected, and that was even when some of the teams were going over to the Big Ten. I don't know. I've seen it a couple of times. All they need to do is take us in Cincinnati, right? I mean, there's so many better. I think that was John Giuliano said that, right? I think there were better options, but I think they held their noses up for so long that other teams weren't worthy of them.
I don't think they had anything to offer to bring us in Cincinnati over. I mean, we're in a better spot now in the Big 12.
Well, I'm talking before we're in the Big 12.
Oh, gotcha.
Like pre-planned, like doing what the Big 12 did, that caused the Pac-12 to be no longer what it was. Being thoughtful ahead of time and bringing up people before they're needed, right? Because between bringing us 4 over on the Big 12 side and jumping ahead of the Pac-12 on Brent Yormark's amazing magicianry or whatever, and jumping ahead of the Pac-12 on what was, pull up the ladder on the last TV rights, right? If the ACC would have gotten ahead of this years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, probably would have made a bit better difference. And maybe you would have had more people on the Atlantic coast. But it just, no.
So for those folks that thought that the ACC did not invite UCF because of Miami, I can tell you that's not the case. I had a conversation with Danny White in private about that. At the time, they were not blocking UCF from going to the ACC. Yeah. So neither was Florida State, by the way. So the people that were blocking UCF to the ACC were not the Florida schools. They were afraid of having too large of a Florida voting block. Yep. So
I see that.
For those of you that were thinking that was a conversation Danny White and I had in 2018 or 2017, I believe. And, I asked him point blank, and he was not afraid to say, nope, it's not them. They both not express support, but did not express any blocking of us joining the ACC.
Yeah. And that's, it seems like it's just the same way that FSU, and again, nothing against FSU. I don't know why they think they can get out of a grant of rights that no one else thinks they can get out of. Maybe they know something we don't, but it just seems like, they are the last change in the ship to be the P4. And if they had a magic wand and went back 2 or 3 years ago, those are not the 3 schools they're taking. Period. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah, I think right. I think the ACC, just looking out, we talked about it. I think it's just going to be I think they're done. I think eventually Clemson, Florida State are going to leave to the SEC. I don't know who the third team that might join them. I think Miami might. If I were to do it, I think Miami's going to try to jump to the Big 12. That gives us a travel partner. And I think those are kind of the big. I think North Carolina, Duke. I think they might go Big 10-ish. I think there's going to be some good programs that are going to get left behind, sadly. I think that the ACC is going to fizzle out. Now, I don't know when it's going to happen. You have Florida State fans telling you, oh, we're coming out in 2025, Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the legal magnifications of that. But I think the ACC's done. I think they moved too slow, like you said, with trying to get seeing into the future. I think, like you said, they stuck their nose up to, oh, we're just too prestigious for some of these schools, or whatever the reason is. I think that they weren't looking far enough into the future, and I think that'll be the demise of that conference, similar to what we saw with the Pac-12. I think a couple of the juggernaut schools are going to leave. Then it's going to be the panic where the other schools need that life raft, where I think like a Miami is like, hey, we're going to get out. Let's get to the Big 12. I think that's going to cause the fizzle of it, and I think we're going to have 3 super conferences. I think that's what college football is going to turn into, sadly. Good for us though, but sad for some of the other schools that, have programs. And I feel for the athletes, at these other schools just going through it. But, it sucks. But hey, that's life.
Yeah. Maybe a depleted ACC and Miami could actually win one, right? Well, at least on the football side, because they haven't won They haven't won a conference championship in quite a while.
Yeah, they're strictly off of hype now. But
yeah,
as we see, hype can carry you a long way.
I mean,
they're gonna. Hey, listen, guys. The hype is going bone this year, so that's Miami. There you go. All right, Alan. Any quick thoughts on the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame what's happened to college football. I mean, to see Stanford and 2 California teams play in the ACC is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it just ruins the regionalism. It's ruining rivalries. It's ruining the tradition. So to see, I think it's just, I mean, I get why they did it. They needed a life raft. And I get why SMU did it even with the unfavorable terms, but to see what's happening is just ridiculous. Yeah, we're heading towards an ESPN versus Fox conference, and it's a shame that it ruins over a century of what college football is built. I mean, college football is my favorite sport for a reason. If I'm going to watch this, I might just watch the NFL. I mean, they're going to have to do something like, whether it's pods or pockets of teams, or they make it football is, the Olympic sports having to travel all this is ridiculous. They don't make money.
Yeah.
So if football is going to be, maybe just one big conference or whatever, however, that's, I guess, whatever, they may have to do it that way, but I hate it. That's just it. I hate the way that college football is turning. I hate that you have a team like Sunny, UCLA, USC playing Michigan in December, and just all these rivalries that are getting ruined by the realignment, but it is what it is. That's all I have to say.
All right, awesome. Something that isn't being ruined is UCF men's soccer, who is currently number 14 in the country. And I mention that because tomorrow night they're actually playing number 7 in the country, FIU. So UCF men's, the women's soccer team's kind of been holding the water here for a while, but this year they finally seem to be putting it together, and they're winning. They're winning a lot of games, and they're winning against P5 competition. So as you know, there is no Big 12 conference soccer, so they are not playing against Big 12 opponents exclusively. However, in men's soccer, that's not as vital because you do have teams like West Virginia in our conference. However, some of these other schools that we're playing against are better in men's soccer. So we beat NC State 3-0. That was the last game, and now we have number 7 FIU. Tomorrow, I'd encourage you to check it out. It's at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. Go support the guys if you can. Women's soccer. Alan, what do we got going on with women's soccer?
I know they're on a pretty good streak right now, right? As far as their, what was that?
At home, yeah.
Yeah, let me bring up their.
They lost
beat
Penn
the
State
Owls
at Georgia, but those were both away games. I know a little bit about women's soccer too. They're doing really good. They're receiving votes still. They just, I want to see them kill it on the road. But they also, their next game is I think Sunday against the Cows. Okay, I'll say the Cows. But yeah, they're still doing pretty solid.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they just played against FAU and won 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they just won 2-1 against FAU, and more importantly, they reached their 500th program win with that win yesterday. So 500 program wins for the women's soccer team, and they've been competitive even in the games that they've lost. So go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
No, it looks like, yeah. So they obviously had a win against North Florida. Then they lost to Penn State. Then they, like you said, had a 2-1 win over FAU. And now we play our good old rival, the Cows, in Orlando. That is coming up on Sunday. And then we get into our first conference play starting the following Thursday against West Virginia. And then from there, they have conference play, Houston, Kansas, Oklahoma State. But women's soccer is usually pretty exciting for UCF. So, we'll see how they do when they start conference play.
All right. So another great program at UCF, besides the softball program, which we can't talk about yet, is UCF women's volleyball, led this year by someone other than the great Todd Dagenet. Who has moved on to professional volleyball and trying to get that league off the ground, but still a big supporter of UCF volleyball. Their most recent win was in the Knots jerseys, which, by the way, I like. I've heard some people say they don't care for them too much, but I do like them for volleyball as well. They beat Alabama State 3-0.
Got Florida State coming up.
Yeah, that's correct, and that's always a tough matchup for us. Florida State is they're just good. They've had a good volleyball program. I believe we beat them in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. But again, this is the first year without McKenna Melville, and we've got some really, really good, lengthy freshmen that are playing and have done a fabulous job, and continued the recruiting class we had this year was phenomenal and stayed despite Todd Dagenet leaving. Our head coach was our recruiting coordinator for a very, very long time for this volleyball program, and she's continuing to continue to bring top-level talent and success to UCF. So make sure that you're out there supporting the ladies. Last year, we saw great crowds. Melville may be gone. However, we've got a great team that's still playing out there.
Yeah, they're 6-1.
Their only loss was to Wake Forest, who at that time was unbeaten, and they made it back from down 0-2 and almost made it in the fifth. So I mean, they're a solid team too,
and new team, all new. There's a lot. We lost a lot of talent. So we've got a lot of freshmen in there. Our setters are new. So a lot of new team playing in there, but they seem to be great. So again, you have made it 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 34 seconds. A far cry from 1 hour and 7 minutes that we typically make UBT live. But it's a sports show, and we had our first game, so there's lots of excitement. We probably won't go into as much detail in the reviews going forward, but this was the first game, so we had a lot to talk about. Thank you for hanging in there with us. But sadly, it's come to the end of the show. Trey and I will continue to try to provide you some defensive outlooks as we kind of proceed through the season. And Alan will have all the stats that you can think of as we move along. And Josh is going to attempt to pop his collar for the rest of the season.
This is what I'm good for.
Yeah, because so far it's been floppy. So we're looking to avoid the floppy collars and floppy play going forward. Thank you all for joining us. Join us again next week after a big dub at Boise as we get ready to charge on to the rest of the season. Go Knights. Remember to subscribe, follow.
And something else, because you're going to keep cutting out.
Oh, gosh. All right. That ends the show, folks. Thank you all. We'll see you next week. Subscribe and please follow. Have a good one. Go Knights and charge